start, our budget calendar is very detailed as far as where we start with this process. We start with the staff, and staff know what they need in order to continue to provide the services that we need to the citizens of the town. In addition to that, we've listened to the trustees talk about some of the things they would like to see. And so we've tried to incorporate all of those things into a budget that we're going to present to you. We do a balanced budget, which is required by statute. So the reason why we're doing the budget this evening is because per statute, I always get that pronounced incorrectly, but anyway, per statute, we're required to present this to the board before the 15th of October. This was the only meeting that we had that was just prior to that date, so that's why we're doing it this evening. So let me start with the screen share. And let's see if I get the right one. Okay, so can you see my screen? And it should show downtown Main Street.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to kind of walk through the different sections. So we actually have 5 sections in our budget, and each one gives you some different information. So I really like our town cover. It's actually looking east up Main Street instead of to the west. There is a table of contents. This table of contents is not linked to anything. However, in your PDF, you can actually open it and bookmark whatever sections you want so you can reference them very quickly. We start with a budget summary, and I know that this looks very large and lots of numbers on it. It's a very high level summary, and what this can do for you is where you see at the top our expenses, we have them divided into certain categories. So there's personnel, supplies, and services. So if you wanted to know what percentage of town expenses were personnel related, you could do it by fund, you could do it in total, you could do it however you wanted to. And this kind of gives you that breakout. These are normal categories that you would see in any financial statement. So that's what we use those, where we get those from. The next section is going to talk about, in the last board, we talked a lot about operating versus capital. And they wanted to make sure that our revenues, of course, always covered our operating expenses. And that a lot of times we have capital, but we don't have enough one-time revenues to cover that. And it's capital and debt. So this chart just kind of gives you a quick snapshot of our operating revenue and expense versus our capital debt revenue and expense. And this is one-time revenues and one-time expenditures. This does not take into account any type of transfers that we have coming in or any use of reserves. So this is just kind of a really quick snapshot. These were requests from the boards and commissions. This next one is actually a pretty important chart, and you can make it, the nice thing about it being electronic is you can make it bigger, because I have old eyes and I can't see the little tiny numbers. So I have to make it a little bit bigger. In this chart, so again, per statute, we are not able to do deficit spending, meaning we cannot exceed with expenditures our revenues for that year, our expected revenues, plus any reserves that we have. So what this chart tells you is what those numbers are. So if we start kind of in the 1, 2, 3, the last blue column in the first left-hand side, it says unassigned fund balance 12/31 of 2019. This is going to be from our audited financial statements. This is money that's available to be appropriated. It's not reserved in any way. So then we look at what we're going to project for 2020 as far as revenue and expense. We also take out anything that we've restricted in this year, which will be that flood money, our flood reserves of the 200,000. So that's coming out of those 2 funds. So we get a projected ending fund balance for 2020 in that next blue column. And we plug in our budget. So this is what we're expecting to spend in 2021. We again have our $200,000 restricted for the flood potential clawbacks. So that gives us a projected ending fund balance at the end of 2021. With this, you'll see in that change in fund balance, we are looking to spend some of our reserves. So if you remember what reserves are, they're where we've gotten more revenue than we've spent in a year. and it just kind of goes into a bucket. And when we need it for capital or whatever we're going to spend it on, then we can go ahead and appropriate that. Now, by town policy, I don't know that if it's an official policy, but best recommended practice is we always have 3 months of expenditures. And all we do is take our expense for 2021, we divide it by 12 and then multiply it by 3, and that gives us how many months of expenditures we need to make sure we have money for. So we don't spend anything below that. And that final column is the projected ending fund balance that is still available to be spent. So this would be our reserves plus our projected revenue less our expenses, and it can't be below that 3 months of expenditures, and none of those are. And so what we're presenting to you is a balanced budget. We are not doing any kind of deficit spending, and that's the column that I kind of keep an eye on. So as we're looking to do capital projects and some other things, I'm making sure that we still have 3 months of expenditures available in case of an emergency. So that's what that chart is telling you. And I'm sorry, I know that's a lot of information, but hopefully that gives you kind of the gist of it. From there, we're going to look at capital. So there's several different things in here that relate to capital. The first one is a capital outlay worksheet. It is done by fund. So you'll see your funds on the left-hand side. It goes through and talks about what we're looking to spend capital money on. And then it will also tell you whether it's a critical need, if it's necessary, or if it's something that we just would really like to have. Then we look at the cost. We look at how we're going to fund it. So all of these are currently being funded. We have some of it from general revenues. CTF is our conservation trust fund. So that's our lottery money that we get from the state every year. It must be spent on parks and recreation type of services or equipment or anything like that. And then we have things that are grant funded. So we've got our Safe Routes to School in here and our 2nd Avenue Bridge. We've got that all in here as grant funded. And then we also have our enterprise funds, which are funded separately from our general revenue. So that's what that chart is showing you. We go further down. So a little bit earlier in the year, we talked about a 5-year capital plan. We had talked to the board about what your priorities were. We got a little bit of feedback from you guys, but then we as staff sat down and we took every project on this list, which this list is coming from all the different plans that we have out there. So we have a paving plan. We have a capital improvement plan for electric. We have a capital improvement plan for water and sewer. We've got a capital improvement plan for our stormwater. So we've got all of these capital plans and we went through them and pulled all the projects out so we could get a very encompassing view of what our capital needs are. And then we took it in and divided it into buckets. So what do we need to do in 1 to 2 years? What can wait to 3 to 4 years? And what's kind of really far out there that we can do some planning for? So this is the list we came up with and how we prioritized it. This may be something that the board wants to address as far as reprioritizing things, or if you see something in here that we thought could wait a little while and you don't want it to, maybe that's something that needs to come back to the top of the list. But this is what staff thought would be a very good way to look at our capital needs over the next 5 years. So that's what that is. Then we had some funding ideas back when we originally presented that 5-year project list. I just kept those in there. These are things that we could talk about at a later time. But in some of our 5-year, actually 3, 4, 5-year projects, we can talk about some type of financings that we could potentially do. It will require some time to put them together. So we might want to look at that. Our debt service, this is just, I had talked about possibly paying off one of our debt service notes. This is actually a pretty high interest note for this environment. So I actually do have this in the budget that we will pay this off in 2021. Next section is going to be on staffing alternatives. We've heard from several board members that they would like to see us tighten the belt a little bit on staffing. These are some of the alternatives that we actually looked at, and we're going to present them here in the budget. You guys can make your determination whether you like what we've decided or whether you like a different alternative. The first piece is going to talk about allocations. So almost every person in the town doesn't just work for the general fund or parks or utilities. Okay, so I'm a finance director and my job covers all of these things. So what we do is we allocate my salary along with my benefits across many different funds. So that's what this is showing you, is just how we're allocating the total wages. And then if you scroll on down, it'll give you employer taxes. It will also give you the insurance. And finally, it will do retirement. So you'll notice in these little charts, sorry, I'm moving a little fast and that kind of makes me motion sick. So I'll slow down. So you'll notice right at the top, that 1.02 that's in blue, that's a 2% merit increase, which is put in everybody's salary just to make sure that we have enough room in there to do merit increases if appropriate. We also have included in this budget an insurance escalator. Last year, we had a 4% increase in our insurance mid-year. This year, we're looking at about a 5%. We need to make sure that we have enough money in our budget that if we do get hit with some kind of an insurance adjustment, that we are accounting for that. So that's what that is. So here's where we're going to look at our staffing alternatives. This one is actually in the current 2021 budget. So what we did is we took out the vacant positions that we currently have, and we intend to not fill them in 2021. So we're looking at 3.5 FTEs. You'll notice that 182 isn't what the actual budget reduction is, because we do have those increases, a 7% increase across the board. So that's just the difference there. Then we looked at a second alternative staffing. So if the board wanted us to look at deeper cuts in staffing, we looked at potentially removing one more person. So in this position, it would be our human resources position, which was created in the flood. So that would be staffing without that position. Currently, this is not in the budget. And then finally, we looked at a third staffing level where if the board was still not happy with the level of cuts, which we have been looking at, we could do one additional one. In this one, it could be 1 or 2 full-time people. And it would be dependent on what the board would like us to do. It would, hopefully you guys would give us direction. In order to maintain levels of service, however, when we cut these types of positions, potentially we would need to add in contracted services or something else to make sure that we continue to maintain the level of service that the citizens expect. So just be aware of that. So I've got some notes in there. It's just to help you understand what the numbers are telling you. And again, you'll see the reductions are across all the different funds based on how these positions are allocated. And then the final piece of this is the actual budget. So this is coming out of our accounting system, Cassell, and there's 35 pages of it. So I'm not going to go through every page, but I do want to just show you kind of the structure. So if you look at the first, each fund is in its own separate grouping. So we start out with the general fund, which is Fund 1. It usually starts with revenue. Actually, it doesn't usually, it does start with revenue, and it has expenditures that follow it. We do put budget notes in here. I left the 2020 budget notes in there just so you could see what we were doing last year. And I put in anything that I thought would be important for you to know for 2021. So if you were to look at property taxes, we have not, until today, received our assessment from the Boulder County assessor. So I actually did the budget based on last year's assessment. The property tax values actually did go up about $500,000. However, we are restricted to a 5.5% increase over last year per statute. So I took my last year's numbers, I added the 5.5%, and that's what's in here. Our mill levy will actually adjust because our valuation is higher. So in order to make that number, it'll actually adjust a little bit. So anytime that there's something in here that is important for you to know, and it could be something where we've gone from a higher amount of money from 2020 to 2021. These are typically expenditures. If we exceed 10% that we are increasing it, there should be a note in there that tells you what we were doing. So those are how these all work. There is a note after each account if there is something that's relevant for somebody to know. So like if you look at our specific ownership tax, we don't expect that to change. So we are budgeting the same as we have in 2020, and the other years look very similar to that. In this structure, it's also going to give you 2 years of historical data. So you have 2018 numbers. Actually, so I've got my column wrong. Sorry about that. If you look at the top number, so the bottom number, so that's 2018. Those are those numbers. 2019 actuals, 2020 actuals through August, our 2020 budget, where we are projecting to be at the end of 2020, and then our 2021 budget. So these are just giving you some reference numbers for your information. I'm going to kind of run through this really quickly. So it will go through each section of our accounts. Again, you have all of your revenues first, all of your expenses are second, and at the end of each budget section, you will see a total. So at the bottom of this, you see your general fund revenue total for the budget is going to be 2567,137, and our expenditures are going to be 2748,002. You'll notice that our expenditures are higher than our revenue. That's because we're going to be using some of our reserves in this fund. So that's kind of the structure of how this works. You will also see, again, capital. It will list all of the things which we are going to spend capital on. And you will also be able to see all of our transfers in and out to different funds. So each fund is a self-balancing set of accounts. So you have a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement for each one. So we transfer money between funds if we need to fund something out of another fund. I know there's a lot of funds in there. Sorry about that. So for instance, we have the Safe Routes to School grant is actually not going to be in the general fund. It will be in the grants fund because we get money that offsets that directly. So we have to fund a portion of that out of the general fund because it's a match. So we move the money from the general fund to the grants fund to offset the expenses that will be there. So that's how that works. So again, there's one for each fund. I'm not going to go through each one, but I just wanted you guys to know what the structure of the budget looks like. I know this is a lot of information. Hopefully you guys will spend the next couple of weeks taking a look at things. I am available if you need any, if you want to sit down and go through it, I'm happy to do that with you guys. Or if there's something that you have a question about, I'm happy to be here to help out wherever I can. So that's kind of the budget in a nutshell. Questions?
Any questions for Finance Director Johnson? Trustee Lowe? No? Mayor Pro Tem Browning?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look through this in much detail. Does this contemplate the Longs Peak Drive water, sewer, and street improvements in 2021?
Yes, sir. In fact, we are planning to do the project. You will see our expenses are much higher than our revenue because we are planning on using the money that we would get from Summit. The Summit money is in the 2020 projection because I was expecting it by the end of the year. It is my understanding, I'm not sure if it will make it this year, but it should be at the beginning of next year if it doesn't make it this year. So we wouldn't do the project until we had all the funds available. We are also, and you'll see this on your meeting this we're looking at doing a grant for a 50% of that if we get it. So we are looking at doing the project. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
have a
Trustee
question.
Rogan has one.
Yeah.
Trustee Rogan?
Did I slide off your screen, Mayor Angelo?
No, you're fine.
So I have a question about the criteria you use to determine whether something was critical or necessary. And maybe you could talk about the differences between the two.
Of course. So when something is critical, for instance, we have on there a plow truck. So we have a plow truck currently, which cannot barely make it up some of the streets that are at a pretty, yeah, they're very tall or very high. So they can't get up very quickly. So that's something that we need in order to be able to provide services for the town. If the truck breaks down, then we won't have any snow removal service. So we consider that critical. That's something that we need to replace in a very short period of time in order to be able to continue the services. So when something is necessary, it's not at the critical stage. It's something that may be able to wait another year, possibly. So these are things that we're looking at replacing. Again, it could be something that may be able to wait a year. Something that's desired, again, that's something that we would like to have, but it's not critical or necessary to the services that we provide to the townspeople. So that's kind of how we do it. A lot of times something will start as desired, and then as things break down, it goes to necessary, and then as it gets really bad, it becomes critical. So it does change over years.
Thank you.
Of course.
So what we want to be able to have the board do is, as Jill said, is over the next couple of weeks, let you become more familiar with this document. It might be different than what you're normally, used to working with in the private sector. There are notes for anything that is a swing of more than 10%. And then those three staffing alternates. So alternates, yes. That we want to talk about on the 17th, if possible, to see if the board is satisfied with the savings from 3.5 current positions not being filled, or if we feel we need to add 1 or 2 more. I would like to reiterate that this budget is very, very similar actually to what we're thinking this year looked like. Probably a slow January, February, March, and then guessing people are going to want to get outside next April, May, June, July, but really questioning whether or not there will be any major special events again next year. It sounds as if it will be a gradual comeback. They now call it the Nike swoosh. Instead of, originally they thought it would be a V when COVID first came out. What they're now saying is it's more like a Nike swoosh and could take 4 to 5 years for the state to recover fully from the pandemic. So we use kind of the same modeling for sales tax, projecting what we think they would do similar to this year, and not planning any special events of large nature. Maybe we can do some that are under that 200 people range, but not expecting that by next early spring, like for outdoor games, that they're going to allow 5,000 people together again. So this is all based on much discussion between staff to come up with this. And then on the 17th, each department head will come in and present their budget to you. So if you have questions directly for them and what's included in a line item or what was your rationale for this, you'll be able to ask those questions directly to them. And hopefully we can walk out on October 17th with a really clear picture of what we need to tweak here. If you want to take out capital purchases or add something in, or which staffing plan the board's most comfortable with for next year. so that we can firm this up and get it back to you. I think the next deadline on the budget calendar is November 2nd, I think.
I have a question.
Trustee Lowe? Yes, sir.
Town administrator, forgive me if you've provided this information before, but when we're looking at staffing, is it possible to send me, perhaps, maybe I'm just missing it, or perhaps all the trustees wish it, a roster of the positions and the money, the loaded money for each of those positions?
We do have it. And Jill, can you prepare that again to go with this? Sure, we can get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
At first blush, we did the staffing. What is the cost of personnel as a percentage of our budget? And of course, it's different based on each fund. And Jill, I believe, do you have a page in, there's a page in the budget on that, isn't there? On that blue and white sheet. The fund balance, is that one? No, it's not in that.
I don't know if I included it in here. It's actually on my work.
But last time we ran those numbers, it ranged between 30% and 43% of the budget were staffing, which we felt was really reasonable compared to some of the other communities we were looking at. But it is such that if we cut much deeper than alternative 1 or possibly 2, it will definitely mean we will have to not conduct some of the services we currently do. We've already started kind of a reorganization of staff based on alternative 1. And I had a big staff meeting on Friday afternoon to kind of give staff a heads up of what we were submitting in the budget, so they weren't surprised when they heard this meeting. And everyone, you know, is very thankful that the budget that we have submitted is a balanced budget and no one is losing their jobs at this point. But they do know that that could be a possibility after our discussions on the 17th. And others are going to absorb those 3.5 positions that we're recommending we not fill.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead. Go ahead, Jill.
So just to make sure that everybody understands too, we are cutting these positions in the 2021 budget. However, a lot of them are parks and recreation related. So as the parks come back online in maybe 2022 or beyond, to manage the parks at the level of staffing that we are proposing in 2021 will be very difficult as we move forward into 2022. I also want to just share something. As we get further into the cuts, it's very concerning, at least to me, that we can still provide the level of service with that reduced level of staffing. So just to be aware.
Well, that's something that I've been concerned about myself since our parks are nearly completed. It seems almost impossible to keep them in the condition that they need to be kept in and cutting staff at the same time. I don't know. I don't know how we do that.
We feel like 2021, we can manage that with a couple extra seasonals for all the grass mowing that's going to occur. But after next year, you know, we're going to have to start a full maintenance plan to keep things in good shape. Bone Park, with just being completed now, is probably, you know, is okay for a while. So we do have seasonals in here to help with that aspect of for next year. But after that, I think we're going to have a more solid plan for heavy duty maintenance in all of our parks.
As do I. I'd like to
But also-
compliment you.
I should also mention a little bit that when we're talking personnel, we're only talking about that staffing plan. We're only talking about actual employees of the town. So we're making the recommended changes based on just the employees. So outside professional services still include those engineers and building officials and code enforcement. We were under the impression from some of the comments by board members that they really wanted it to be personnel. So we took a serious look at that. But if there's a preference that, well, I'll just throw it out, like code enforcement. If you decide you don't want to put that kind of money into that position, it could mean a personnel could come back. But we really looked at employees, and outside professional services are still in here at what we think are realistic numbers of hours we're going to need to get through next year with Noise Summit. And several developments are being contemplated on Main Street.
Any further comments?
A question, when you were talking about the total percentage of budget that's personnel, that's just, are you looking at just employees? Or are you including any contract services in there?
Just employees.
I mean, for example, a big contract, probably, I think the most costly contract we have is with Boulder County Sheriff's Office for their services. And of course, a big chunk of that is paying for the sheriff's deputies that patrol the town and do other things. So, you know, in some respects, comparing our percentage of personnel costs to another municipality that may have its own police department is a little bit of an apples and oranges thing.
Oh, absolutely, that is. We were trying to look at other community. It is difficult because every community is set up just a little different. So it's, you can't really find an exact, but that's why when I'm looking at those numbers, I do think that it shouldn't just be, we're going to cut employees. I think it needs to be, you know, looking at all of what we consider personnel that help us run our services. But no, for that number that I mentioned, I was only speaking about employees, not independent contractors.
And then one other question, I think I picked this up in passing as we were flipping through the pages, but this would, we're assuming that we increase the mill levy to the maximum extent that we're allowed to under Colorado law from this year to next year in this draft of the budget.
That is correct. It's got a 5.5% increase.
And so, yes, if the board chooses not to do that, then that will mean we need to increase revenues elsewhere or continue to cut expenses.
Something else that I put in the budget, and this is just in looking at our paving assessment. Paving and streets is something that the general fund typically funds. I did set up a capital projects fund, so that is going to be a new fund for 2021. And it does have a transfer from the general fund into the capital projects fund of $250,000. This was based on the assessment that was done for us that they recommended. What this will do is once it goes into the capital projects fund, it will be basically earmarked for capital projects related to governmental funds. So it would be streets, sidewalks, things like that. So I think that that's a really great way to do it. One thing you guys need to know though, is once we put it in there, it's very difficult to get it back out. So if we want to do that, it is a good way to save for those types of projects.
Any other questions? I would like to compliment you, Finance Director Johnson. This is the finest budget I've seen in the 7 that I've participated in, and I think it's a really good start. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Lowe, did you want to say something? No? Okay. I think we're done then with the workshop. Thank you, everybody. Take a little break.
See you soon. Thank you.
They're not even close, man.
Do you notice one thing that,
They're not even close.
you notice one thing though?
We'll wait for Trustee Miller and Trustee Watt. They should be on soon. Good evening, Sergeant.
Good evening. How are you today?
We'll just wait for Trustee Watt and see if he joins us. Madam Clerk, did Trustee Watt indicate that he would join us for the regular meeting?
He did. He emailed me and said, and there he is. Let him in.
Okay. Good evening, Trustee Watt. Okay, we'll get started. I'll call the Monday, October 5th, 2020 regular Town of Lyons Board meeting to order. Could we please have the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Angelo,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Present.
Trustee Caravas,
Present.
Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Miller,
Present.
Trustee Waugh,
Present.
and Trustee Rogan.
Present.
Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands, one nation, under God,
under
indivisible, with liberty and justice.
justice for all.
This is a time when we take a reflective moment of silence. And I'd just like everybody to keep all the victims and families of the victims and people that are sick from COVID in their thoughts. The total is now 215,000 Americans dead. Thank you. Number 3 is a motion to approve the agenda. Would anybody wish to make a motion to amend the agenda at this time?
I would.
Trustee Rogan?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to move item 9.1, the second reading of Ordinance 1088 to a date certain, November 2nd. The reason I want to do that is, you know, I'm sure we've all seen all the emails that have been coming in over the past couple days. And I'd like to give us some time to consider them and consider a more nuanced approach to this in the form of some amendments that are not all or nothing, but that address the safety concerns and the equity concerns that people have raised.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to amend the agenda as stated by Trustee Rogan. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
I had a comment, sir. I was waiting for the board.
Excuse me, Town Administrator Simonson.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask Attorney Dittman, because this was posted as a public hearing tonight, do we have to open that and then continue?
I would prefer that we open the public hearing and then receive the public comments as it was noticed that way. And then the board could decide at that point to continue it to a date certain if it wanted to. And that's the more appropriate way to do this.
And Counselor, would you then recommend to delay it to number 9 on the agenda also, or to take up the question of the second reading now?
I don't think it's appropriate to do it now necessarily, but let me take a look at the agenda and see what makes sense.
Well, we also have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yeah, so we'll have to deal with those. But I mean, if the board wanted to move it, prior to staff reports or however it wants to do it, it can. But I think we need to approve the agenda first at the very least. And it's been the board's practice to have audience business after approval of the agenda. So it's up to the board.
What is the pleasure of the board?
I think we need to vote on this amendment first and then.
Okay. All right. No further comments? Trustee Miller?
I just have a question about the public hearing. If we have a public hearing on this specific ordinance as it's written, and we take it off the agenda or to move it to a date certain, is there a possibility that the public can speak again?
Yes. Yeah, you can call a
Okay.
second public hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd continue the public hearing.
Okay. So I mean, does it proper procedure, you're just saying proper procedure is to have a public hearing still tonight?
Because it was noticed and people have shown up for it.
Okay.
I think it only makes sense to have the public hearing tonight. You can decide at that point. And there may be people who don't want to continue this, would like to pass it later. I think the board can't properly make that decision without hearing what the public has to say first.
Sure. Okay.
So that makes sense to me. Can I rescind my motion?
You may.
Okay,
So long as the seconder agrees.
I'll rescind. That's fine.
Okay, I rescind and yep, great, thank you.
Thank you. And as Counselor said, I think that that's probably proper and we can address it under number 9. Are there any other trustees that would wish to amend the agenda in any way? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yeah, I have really kind of a question about what the rules of the game are with respect to the last item on the agenda, which is there as a discussion of future agenda items, potential future agenda items. In the past, when we've raised issues on that part of the agenda, it's just been a matter of a trustee or multiple trustees suggesting that something go on a future agenda. And the discussion has been limited to, should we take this up on a future agenda or not? It has not been a dive into the substance of the matter. But in this packet that we got today, I think for the first time, under each of the 3 items in that last section of the agenda, there are like substantive memos from the staff and background facts and things that you would normally see on items under general business that we're going to have, full substantive discussion on. So I guess my question is, when we get to that part of the agenda, is our discussion still going to be limited to, do we put this on a future agenda or not? Or are we going to actually bring up the merits and discuss ideas about pro and con about those types of things?
Mayor Tim Browning, my interpretation of your legislative rules would be, as you had suggested earlier, they should only be whether or not it should be on the agenda. And then these would be for a future meeting to have a general discussion item to discuss the substance of the item. I don't know why the materials were included, but maybe it was to help illuminate why we should have this on the agenda or not. So
It was
Okay.
because we've already addressed all these issues. And so we put in the background information or some information that could help the board decide if you want to bring them back as a general business.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure where we were going.
Any further questions? If not, I'll call for the motion, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Carabas,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 4 on the agenda is audience business. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the Board of Trustees on any subject other than the second reading, which will be a public hearing on Ordinance 1088. That needs to wait for that discussion. Please state your name and address for the record before you speak. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to address the Board of Trustees at this time?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rick DeSalvo, 419 Park Street, Lyons, Colorado. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Oh, we can hear you fine.
Oh, great, okay. So just, I can't see myself on the video, and I'm not obviously Bonnie DeSalvo, but I'm Rick DeSalvo. So given that what is going to happen with the agenda item regarding the RV parking item is not really going to have any sort of substantive discussion. I did send in some written comments, as I'm aware that other residents in the Confluence,
So,
a few
sir,
other folks sent in written
Sir.
comments. Yes.
Sure. If I may stop you, because there is a public hearing still scheduled for tonight, you have to
Yeah.
hold your comments on the RV and the parking ordinance till that point. There is still a public hearing scheduled. There will be substantive comments by the audience and the public if they so wish to give it. And
You
so
probably
this time-
misunderstood me. This is not in relation to the ordinance. This is in relation to the whether there would be an agenda item in the future to consider RV parking.
Sorry for the confusion. We run into this issue a lot where people
Sure.
talk on the second reading topics.
Right.
You're
So I
speaking
just
about
wanted to,
Item 13, number 2.
yeah,
Mr.
Thank you.
I just
Continue.
wanted to say that the written comments that have been submitted, to hold on to those, I recommend that the Board of Trustees hold on to those if and until such time as an agenda item related to RV parking on town parcels is actually adopted. Thanks.
Mr. DeSalvo, I did receive your email and I've got it printed up and I will save it for the board.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to address the Board of Trustees at this time?
Yes, Edward Bruder,
Address, please.
113 Eagle Valley Drive, as well as Gabry Cornell, 113 Eagle Valley Drive. I had requested earlier, Mary Angelo, that I be allowed to read her portion of this statement that we have, because since her stroke, she's sitting here with me. She would prefer that I read it.
Madam, Mr. Bruder, Town Clerk Vasquez has the statement, and she will read it into the record if you don't mind, sir. I prefer that we do it that way, if you don't mind.
Okay, you'll read her portion.
Yeah,
She'll read her portion into the,
that's right.
Yes, sir. You emailed it to me earlier today, sir.
okay. I just want to open that up very quickly so that I see where she started.
Okay, I can read it in right now.
No,
this is-
hers goes after mine, please. I want to start this.
Oh, you
okay.
want to go first? Okay, certainly.
Okay, yes. Due to the town's negligence, gross incompetence, and their wanton disregard for my health, I have been without safe water in my home since early 2014. My water showed evidence of contamination shortly after it was regained utility service, which was the first home in Stone Canyon to have its gas and water services restored. It should be noted that right after the flood, the volunteers came to my home, drained the hot water tank and plumbing system, complying with the instructions given to all town residents by town officials. My pipes were dry and in pristine condition until the service was restored. Brown slimy biofilm and brown sputtering water began appearing in early 2014. I immediately brought the filter from my fridge and an aerator from the master bathroom faucet to Kyle Miller. I repeatedly left the fridge filters and aerators over the following 3 years with various town staff, including Victoria. Kyle Miller sent public works employees to assess and later flush the system numerous times, doing it at least once himself at the town's expense, yet the contamination persisted. The town, acting as the water authority, has taken water samples from my home on at least 6 separate occasions since 2014 and constantly assured me that my water was fine to drink, cook, and shower with. In 2018, I was informed that all of those previous samples taken from my home, which had been collected in unsterile, used Gatorade bottles, had been presented to the technician at the sewer plant for testing. They only tested for the presence or absence of E. coli and coliform. I spoke to Victoria numerous times about this problem. I was reassured my water was fine. I was told the problem was my hot water heater, and it wasn't. In early 2015, I began having debilitating digestive distress. By 2016, I suspected it was the water. I began batteries of invasive tests looking for the cause of my digestive problems. I told the doctors I thought it was my water, and they would tell me if the town has had it tested, it shouldn't be the water. So I endured tests for every other possible cause with negative results every time. I was seriously ill from my water for 5 years. That illness has robbed me of considerable income because I've been unable to travel. It has made my home impossible to sell. It has forced me into foreclosure more than once, and it has destroyed my quality of life. The town now denies liability. 3 board members, including the mayor, have been in this house and witnessed my water problem themselves. The previous mayor never followed up on her promise for comprehensive testing and an investigation. The current mayor has been in office for 6 months and has not said a word. The town administrator has continually lied about the promises and agreements she made with me that others will attest to. The town attorney has misled the state's constituent services attorneys as to critical facts of the matter. Boulder County contacted FEMA. I received a call from Robin Napke, the Western National Director of FEMA. I requested assistance. She told me it was too late. She then reported to me that all the town would have had to do was add it to the list. At that time, all she could offer me were coupons for mental health counseling so I could have help processing my limited options, and that's a quote. The previous public works director remembers the meeting with Victoria and I where Victoria agreed to get the problem properly diagnosed and fixed. After Mr. Miller's departure, I had a similar conversation with Victoria and Joe Cabala, where it was again decided that if we can find a plumber with the understanding of what happened and Joe was satisfied with the plan, the town could pay to repair it. It was after the town got the estimate, their tune changed. The town conveniently withheld the documentation and notes from those meetings where Victoria and Kyle and Victoria and Joe agreed to resolve this issue at the town's expense. It was part of a 1.5 pages of exclusions to my Colorado Open Records Act request, which I was charged over $250 for being deemed privileged information. Victoria repeatedly told me all the water tests were fine, except I should replace my hot water heater. I reminded everyone with photos, videos, and the samples I was leaving at town hall, my problem has been present in my toilets, refrigerator, and zero waste reverse osmosis system, which are all connected to the cold side only. In 2017, with the help of Trustee Miller, CDPHE properly tested my water, the results of which was a heterotropic plate count of 24,000, which was the highest amount they had ever tested in treated water. Clearly not fine. The same week, I received an email from Joe Kabbalah that the results of his test on my water were fine, yet I needed to replace the hot water tank. From there, Boulder County Public Health, CDPHE, Colorado State University Lab, and many other Boulder County departments became involved. They were so concerned. Oh, this is the part that Gabby was going to read. So I will let you start that now, please,
Okay.
Dolores.
After the extent of the problem was known, Boulder County Public Health, CDPHE, Colorado State University Lab, and many other Boulder County departments became involved. They were so concerned about Ed's health and our exposure to this water, they offered to temporarily relocate Ed at the county's expense until the problem was resolved. It was widely believed that the town and its contractors had not properly flushed or disinfected the lines post-flood, and the house, being the first home restored and with empty pipes, became the host to this aggressive bacteria. Meanwhile, the town said our water was fine. In December of 2018, 178 days after first being told the water was in fact not fine at all, Ed served all relevant Town of Lyons parties notice of claim as prescribed by Colorado statute that was preserving the right to sue for damages. During the 178 days that the town knew the true state of our water, they did nothing but take the 2 samples and send them to a lab that could only test for E. coli and coliform. They told us the water was fine, and again to replace the hot water heater. CDPHE notified the town that our home's water posed a public health risk, and the town's response was to force us to pay $1,800 to have backflow preventers installed. After the state reviewed the town's water record keeping, the town was required to send non-compliance letters to every water customer in town. Now adding insult to injury, after causing the problem in the first place, the town, through Aaron Kaplan, sends us a letter that we must have the backflow device tested every year, which was news to us. The town should be the one conducting the specialized and expensive test on this device, as Ian Greer did last year. Last summer, Boulder County Public Health, CDPHE, and the lab director at Colorado State University performed extensive testing throughout our home, taking 15 samples, of which 11 were on the cold side, from locations all through the house. They precisely identified 9 different forms of soil and waterborne bacteria at levels as high as 1,820 per milliliter. The lab director stated that based on those results, the most likely source of contamination was the flood. Additionally, they detected bacteria at the main entry point into the house. A detailed report was sent to the town and there was no response. In spite of the town's repeated advice to replace the hot water heater, we were told by experts not to introduce a new water heater to the system, as it would become a new breeding ground for further bacterial growth. So both of us have had to navigate this entire COVID pandemic after me suffering 2 strokes in April without having hot water to wash our hands. This is tragic and shameful, and a bright light is going to be shined on what's happened here. Thank you for your time. Gabby Cornell, 113 Eagle Valley Drive.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to address the Board of Trustees at this time? Madam Clerk, do we see anybody?
No, sir, I don't see any hands waved.
Okay. Boulder County Sheriff's Report, Sergeant Bill Christ.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I have a short report as I really don't have anything to report. Everything is good in town. From our vantage point, call load is down. I would like to give a shout out, applause to all the road work and the curb painting and striping that has gone on. It really looks good. A reminder for everybody that school is back in session. So if we can make sure the kids going back and forth to school are safe by keeping our speeds down through town, that'd be great. There will be some on and off activities at the high school, and I understand that football is coming back. So hopefully we'll be getting back a little bit to a touch of normalcy. That's all I have to report at this point in time.
Are there any questions for Sergeant Christ? As I always have in the past, sir. I'm sorry about what happened in Compton.
Thank you.
You're
It's
welcome, sir.
it's rough, and we pray for everybody involved, and we'll keep trucking forward.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Trustee reports. I'm going to mix it up a little bit tonight. Trustee Waugh.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick report for tonight. The PCDC, we're going to see several things that they've been working on our agenda this evening. The Joint Fire District, as well as the R1 nonconformities. They're also looking at a couple of commercial development, as well as the Summit Group affordable housing is coming back to them. So really, I was not able to attend the meeting, so I just have a quick update of that's what is up with the PCDC.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Rogan.
You're making us pay attention, Mayor Angelo.
Yeah, I'm putting everybody a little bit off balance, including myself.
That's good for us. The EVC and the HPC haven't met since last we met, so I'm looking forward to those meetings. One thing I'd like to bring up is, so I know that when the Lions Recorder was in print, it printed the agenda for board meetings in advance of the meetings. And I'm wondering if, in the spirit of helping keep folks informed, if it would be possible for staff to send out an email when the agenda is posted that doesn't have to list the whole agenda, but would list first and second readings of ordinances and the ordinance titles. I think that might help get people more informed more quickly and more completely about what we're on about. And that's it.
Thank you. Trustee Miller.
I don't have anything tonight.
In between meetings, Trustee Carols.
Like Trustee Rogan, there has not been a meeting of the UEB since our last meeting. They are meeting this Wednesday. Yes, this Wednesday the 7th at 4:30. So come one, come all, enjoy. That's it.
Trustee Lowe.
I have nothing to report now.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yes, I'd like to report that Lions volunteers, with what was probably a record number of volunteers in recent times, made the rounds around town last Tuesday and last Saturday and picked up a whole lot of limbs that are now piled across from the Botanic Garden. And my understanding is that a town rented chipper will be arriving soon. And a team led by Trustee Caravas will start the momentous task of processing and chipping up those limbs. I'd also like to thank the town for some town staff. People helped with us last Tuesday as well, and they were of great help, but that project was completed. We tried to get everything. If we missed any, apologize for that, but we did the best we could, and I think things look a lot better.
Thank you, sir. I don't have much to report because there haven't been any meetings, but the thing that I'm happiest about, and I would like the trustees' input into how they feel this could take place as efficiently as possible, is that Boulder County is going to provide us with portable testing for COVID. So to me, personally, that's fantastic news. And Madam Clerk, I apologize, but could you bring me the two appointments I'm to make tonight? I misplaced them. I can do that after we have our leaf agenda request and the PCDC recommendation. If you have time, please. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's what you call efficiency. Moving on to number 7, the leaf agenda request. Staff, leaf.
Mayor.
Leaf is here. Oh,
Yeah. Go ahead, Lori.
hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Lori Barton, and I think I haven't met all of you, but I've met a lot of you, and I'm the executive director at Leaf. And we just wanted to take a few minutes to sort of let you know what we're up to and just fill you in on what's happening from the human services perspective in town. And I'm looking at my notes here. So COVID has obviously hit the community really hard. We've seen an increase of about 100% of participation in our food pantry. The basic needs and resources grants that we make to individuals, to households, those have gone up by 450% so far this year. Meals on Wheels participation has gone up by 21%. We've just increased our mental health therapist hours working weekly from 20 hours per week to 30 hours per week. So we can do our part to try to get ahead of the mental health problems that are here and that are growing. I learned about a study recently that in northern Colorado, just based on internet activities of people in this section in our region, that it's expected that 30% of people are going to have significant mental health crises in the next 18 months. And that's primarily brought about by COVID and all of the effects of COVID. So we're trying to prepare for that. What some of the increases that look, what that looks like specifically for us in terms of the food pantry increase, especially in the early days, we've had a hard time accessing enough food for everyone. So, where we used to spend less than $100 a week on supplemental materials for the food pantry, some weeks we've had to spend close to $1,000 since COVID came. So we can access enough food for all of the people who are coming to us. As of the end of July, we've served over 500 people in the community, and over 100 of them are children. So the needs are big, and we're positioning ourselves for sort of the unknown as we head into the holidays. I think, maybe we're at some sort of a status quo right now, but, even people who are starting to recover, the holidays are going to be a rough season for a lot of people. And so we're trying to prepare ourselves for that. One of the ways we're doing that is that we're having a virtual rave to the grave this year, because we can't obviously do it in person. And it would be great if you would look for that on our website or follow it on Facebook and share it around. This weekend, we're having catered dinners and concerts where just 10 people from the community each night purchase tickets, and Arthur Leland is going to put on an amazing show. And we've got, Mojos, Bella La Crema, Spirit Hound, City Star, Geraldine Berner, Plume and Furrow, Harvest Tables. All of these people were purchasing some of the things that they're doing for us, and they're making some donation also. But we're putting on a great show for 10 people each night who will come. And then from that, Arthur and his team will create the virtual show that's going to be streamed out on October 30th. So if you could make plans to attend that, talk it up, follow it, you know, it's our only fundraiser of the year. And so we're hoping to make it a success. And I can tell you so many people are working really hard to do just that. Are there any questions that I can answer about anything we're doing?
I don't have a question, but all I can say is thank you for what
Thank
you
you. Thank you. I caught myself telling someone it's my joy the other day, but of course it's not my joy that so many people need help. But we are honored to help. And, you know, as you know, it's me part-time and a therapist and about 100 amazing volunteers who pull it off day in and day out. So
I think that you have a board of trustees.
yeah, our board of directors.
But I'm talking about the board of trustees.
Oh, thank you.
That support you 100%.
Thank you.
And I just want to let you know that you let us know what you need.
Okay, and then so maybe there's just one more thing. And, you know, in the not too distant past, we've brought up the fact that we have really outgrown the space and the capacity that was available to us at Lions Community Church, where we've been from the start. And I wanted to let you know that it looks like we're so close to working on a solution with them that they're going to be able to give us some more space and more access time. And so we're really hopeful that we can, you know, at a minimum, weather this storm for a year to a year and a half at a minimum there. So just know I'll be knocking on the door at some point in the future, but hopefully it's after we're all through this crisis, you know, if we do need to get a home. But I think that we're, you know, our collaboration with the church is going to work out okay for now.
Thank you. Any further communication with Lori? Madam Administrator?
Lori, thank you for all you do, of course, for our community. And as we talked, as you referred to earlier, that you may be in need of space, please know that if you need just some storage area or, you know, for non-perishables, we could probably help you find some if that helps make another room at the church for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments by the board? Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Madam Clerk, would you read number 7.2 into the record, please?
Yes, the next agenda item is the PCDC recommendation regarding non-conforming buildings and structures in the Old Town R1 zoning district.
Staff, please.
Sure. The PCDC, so this problem emanated from a structures in the historic area of town in the R1 district. There are a lot of structures that are primarily single family homes that were built in the setback. And this is due to the fact that we had different zoning in this area for a long time. There was a context sensitive setback in this area. The town got rid of that in the 70s or 80s and ended up creating a lot of non-conformities in town. And thereby a lot of the buildings in the historic areas of town are located, the single family homes are located in the front yard setback. As people come in to develop front porches or side additions, they would turn in building permits and had to go through the variance process because they were modifying a non-conforming building in the setback, which is required under our code. there were several of these that came to the Board of Adjustments. And as the Board of Adjustments looked at these, they requested, because this was a common problem all over town, that the Board of Trustees address the issue as a zoning issue or as outside of the Board of Adjustments process, because they could not adjust it that way. The Board of Trustees referred this back to the PCDC. That's the background you knew to date. The PCDC has been looking at this for about a month and a half. They looked at a general rezoning. They looked at a text modification to zoning and a text modification to the non-conforming language in the code. And when they looked at all of these, initially they wanted to look at rezoning. They decided not to do that at this point, although they want to do that after the comprehensive plan, because they want to understand what the future land use is at that time. So they elected to wait until after the comprehensive plan to do that. What you have before you in the packet is a general recommendation to modify the non-conforming language as it applies to R1 zoning with alley loaded lots. This doesn't solve the entire problem, but it'll solve close to 80% of the problem in this area of town, because most of these are located on alley loaded lots. They just wanted me to bring this to you and describe our proposed intention to bring forward an ordinance before we spent time drafting the legal changes and bringing it to legal review. So this is the direction they would like to take, but they wanted to get your feedback on that proposal.
I think that this issue has been brought to the Board of Trustees in the past, if I'm not mistaken. But the question that I would like to ask you is, you're talking about front and rear setbacks. On side setbacks, regardless of how the zoning is changed, those would still be brought before the variance committee. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't propose any modification to the side yard setback. Those are typically not intruded upon. In some cases, they are. A variance would still be required, or in some cases where a building crosses the lot line, a lot line adjustment would be required.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any questions for Planner Glasgow?
Nick, Mayor Angela.
Trustee Watt?
Full disclosure, I do own a lot loaded or a alley loaded lot with no permanent structures on it. 641 3rd Avenue. I did have a question. Is it a fair assessment for this, Paul, that that it's really extensions of existing nonconformity? It's not new or additional nonconformity.
That is correct. Thank you for that clarification. This would only apply to those that are currently in the setback and their existing non-conforming structures. They would be encouraged to expand slightly, not without reservation, meaning they couldn't just expand further into the setback, except for if there was a front porch. Any new structure would have to be built according to the setbacks. The PCDC still doesn't believe that a 25-yard or 25-foot setback is something that should be with an alley loaded lot, but they wanted to address that again after the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions for Planner Glasgow? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yeah, Paul, if I'm reading this right, what would be allowed under this language? It's not going to have any effect on alleys at all. Is that correct? I mean, it's, are there encroachments into alleys now that could be, where somebody could build, you know, put something taller on the same encroachment, or how is this going to relate to alleys? Are they still going to be open to the extent they are now?
Good question. This does not encourage encroachments whatsoever. This just encourages into the public right of way. This only encourages encroachments into the setback. So nobody could go beyond the property line. The setback is the line from your property line to a certain distance within that property line that you need to set a structure back. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess what I had in mind, and maybe it's not an issue, is if there is an existing building of some sort, of garage or shed, that goes into the setback. As I read this, you could do a new structure as long as it didn't increase the area that it now occupies. Is that the best way to say it?
Well, the proposal is to allow an increase to the side, but not to increase the intrusion into the setback. Only a front porch would be allowed to intrude further into the setback.
So there'd be no increase of whatever existing intrusions there are into the setbacks is what I'm looking at, other than the front porch.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So does the PCDC need a recommendation for a statement it would wish to make in the comprehensive plan, Bob? Is that what they're searching for? If they're not, go ahead.
Excuse me, Mayor Angelo. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Don't worry about it.
They just wanted me to bring this to you and see if there was any feedback. If not, they're going to proceed with drafting this and bring it to you as you know, more or less what you see here today. They'll bring it to legal for review, but they didn't want to do that if this wasn't the direction that seemed acceptable. They wanted to get it to you first so that we weren't going through legal.
What is the pleasure of the board? Mayor Pro Tem Browning?
My reaction to it is it's certainly preferable than trying to do a lot by lot rezoning and surveying and engineer review, which was going to get into quite a bit of expense, it sounded like. So I certainly think this is worth doing, and let's see if it solves the problem that the review board has had. And I think the idea of take a couple of years, see if this solves 80% of the problem, and then after the comprehensive plan, if it doesn't, and there's bandwidth to pursue the rezoning, then you can look at it then. But I think it is a step in the right direction, and I think it's worth trying. That's my feedback.
Did you have a comment, Paul?
I did. Thank you, Mayor Angelo. Just a clarification, actually. We don't have to survey every lot in order to rezone. The individuals need to do that. The town can do a rezoning but per a map. And so it isn't lot by lot, just to be clear. It's not quite as expensive as that would be.
Trustee, how do you feel about it?
I feel positive about it. I think let's give it a try and see what problems we can solve in a simple way.
Excellent. Trustee Watt?
Yeah, I just echo everything that's been said, and I applaud the subcommittee for coming up with a solution that is pragmatic and not expensive.
Trustee Miller?
Agreed.
Trustee Caravas?
I concur.
And I concur as well. Planner Glasgow, please let the PCDC know of the direction of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much. I will do.
I have several appointments to make to commissions. One to the Economic Vitality Commission, I appoint Paul Dreyer if there are no objections. To the Lions Historic Preservation Committee, I appoint Lauren Click. And to the Citizens Budget Committee, I appoint Charles Olson, who has asked me since the concept was presented to the Board of Trustees to be appointed. If there are no objections, we'll move forward. Thank you. Staff reports. Number one, 2021 draft budget presented to the board. Madam Administrator.
Hello, it's the finance director is also on the microphone.
Okay.
As you saw tonight during the budget workshop, the board is required to present a draft preliminary budget to the board by October 15th of each year. So we have presented the board with the 2021 Town of Lyons annual budget. We will probably get that it might be online already. It is online already for the public to start looking at. We need to have this as an item on just to acknowledge that you have received it from staff, that it is a balanced budget. And our next step will be to hold a day-long budget retreat workshop on October 17th. Right now, it appears to be from 9 until noon. We'll take a break and then 1 to 4. So this is just purely to have the minutes note that you've received your budget before the October 15th deadline.
Thank you. Does Finance Director Johnson have anything to add?
No, I think that actually summed it up very nicely. Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome. Sorry.
Thanks. Flood recovery update.
Tracy is also online here to give the flood recovery.
Yep. Evening, everybody. I'm not going to read through the report, but I had a few highlights. Wanted to mention that Bone Park Phase 2 is substantially complete. So they are working on final cleanup and punch list items. I spoke with the project manager with the contractor today, and he felt like everything should be completed by the end of the week. And then we'll have to do normal closeout documentation for that project. The roadway paving project that we had, that also is substantially complete. So they're working on final touch-ups, repairs, cleanup items, punch list items. So that is wrapping up as well. We did have a pre-construction meeting for the stormwater project that will be happening on High Street between 4th and 5th. So that project is kicking off, and I believe the contractor is mobilizing the week of October 12th. So that will be a new project starting. The stream bank restoration project will be nearing substantial completion more next week. So we have a lot of projects wrapping up and other projects kicking off. I do want to give an update on the 2nd Avenue Bridge. I have been talking with the state and FEMA to review the shortfall that we have in the budget. And actually FEMA sent me an email today, and I sent over some additional information they requested. So they're reviewing, and but we still don't have word from them if they will obligate additional funds. However, the town is looking at, staff is also looking at other options for funding. We do have a meeting with the Boulder County Collaborative, which is the CDBG funding that we've been utilizing for recovery. And there is some turn back money coming back. And so we'll be talking with them to see what options, how much money there will be available. And we do have a list of other projects that we would like to possibly utilize that funding for. Specifically, 2nd Avenue Bridge would be top priority. But we also need some match for the pedestrian bridge, the 4th and Evans pedestrian bridge. We still have another stormwater project that we could complete. And we do need to file a LOMAR, a ladder of map revision for all the work that we've done over the years that would improve the floodplain mapping. And so that also could be a few $100,000 to complete that process. So that's some additional, another project that we need funding for. So we'll be talking with the collaborative on Friday about possible additional funding for those projects. I would like to mention that we needed 4 easement agreements for the 2nd Avenue Bridge. 1 is signed, 2 of them are in process. So the 194 and 196 are working on getting signatures for their easement. However, we still have 1 property owner at 207 2nd Avenue that we have not come to an agreement with. So we're still working on that. But we do have proposals coming in for a condemnation attorney on Wednesday. And then we're also exploring some other options of maybe working with Boulder County and having them assist us with the condemnation in case we don't get proposals again. There's a few other options we are exploring as well. But in general, that's kind of where we're at with the 2nd Avenue Bridge. We did have a pre-construction meeting last week and it went really well. I do think we have a really good team that could complete this project. Despite the challenges we've had, I think the contractor is very good. We have a CEM on board that has a really good reputation, and then we have someone on board for materials testing. So right now, everybody's kind of on hold until we know where we're at with funding and to finalize these easement agreements. But essentially, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there any questions for Tracy? Trustee Lowell.
Yeah, I have a question. Does the demolition of the old 2nd Avenue Bridge, can that go forward without the condemnation?
The demo can, yes. The temporary easement, construction easement agreements is for the grading of the river, just tying in the grading to the bank. So yeah, we could move forward with demo.
And is that demolition being done by Zach Dirt as well?
Yes, they're the contractor that will demo and construct the bridge.
Yes. Great, thank you.
However, I'm not sure we want to mobilize Zach Dirt too far into this until we know the funding is secure.
Yes. Yeah.
In case they come back and say, repair the bridge, don't replace it.
Right. But if we do get the additional funding, they do plan to mobilize October 20th.
Could you clarify what you said about the funding, Madam Administrator?
Right now, we are waiting for a response from FEMA. We thought we would get it today, and then today is now a state holiday, so they meet on Mondays. We're hoping we don't have to wait another week, but we are waiting for FEMA to tell us if they are going to approve the budget as the benefit cost that was submitted. If by some chance they wouldn't approve the entire amount, we either need to find other funds to cover the replacement of the bridge, or they could come back and say, we'll only pay for the repair of the bridge. So this is really critical. You know, Tracy and I meet with that group regularly, and we've been waiting to get their determination. And so we are both really concerned about moving too far forward in case they would say, we'll only pay for repair. We don't dare, you know, remove the current bridge and then be facing that. So we are very hopeful to get some word from them in the next couple of days. But in the meantime, the overrun that we already have for the replacement of the bridge, as Tracy said, we have a meeting planned on Friday to see if the CDBG-DR will pick up that overage.
Okay.
So we're ready to go when we get the word from FEMA.
All right. Any further questions? Thank you. Administrators report.
Thank you. A quick update on a COVID update locally. As you guys know, a couple of weeks ago, CU Boulder had a huge outbreak, putting our county as the highest rates in the state, putting us in what they call the red zone of more than 350 cases per 100,000 of people. The response by the state and the city and the university was a very restrictive plan to keep 18 to 22-year-olds isolated from others, and it appears to be working. The numbers are going down significantly. Lyons itself, the numbers as far as I know are still at 8 cases in our community that have since testing began. So we were concerned that with the students being told they couldn't leave their homes, that we might see some of them show up in our parks. But thankfully over the weekend, the last 2 weekends, we have not seen that happen. So it appears students are taking this seriously. So the parks have actually been very pleasant. And we are, I have recommended that we start to take away some of all those no, no, no signs and start putting up friendly reminders about social distancing and wearing masks. This weekend, Bone Park actually had more parking revenue than Laverne Johnson for the first time ever. The skate park seems to be a really popular place. But in regard to COVID, again, the message we're getting from the county and the state is to stay vigilant. This is not a time to let our guard down as we are heading into a time period where we'll be closing ourselves into houses and rooms without ventilation. So remain vigilant. In the meantime, as the mayor alluded to, we are planning to get a mobile testing unit here in Lyons. It appears it's going to be every Friday between October and December. This is being paid for with Boulder County's CARES Act funding. And so stay tuned. They were going to try to do a dry run to make sure it was going to work out here, but that would be free and available to anyone who is showing symptoms or not and wants to be tested. And it'll be a drive up and a walk up site. So we hope to get that rolled out this week with all of the details for people. We encourage people to take advantage of that service if they feel they've been exposed or feel they might have symptoms. In addition, we are working on setting up a flu shot clinic. We're trying to get an idea if people have an interest. So if you know of people who would come and get their shot here in town, we'd like to have a better idea of how many people are interested in that service. So we will definitely be offering it, even if the rest of the community doesn't want to be involved. The town and the board is welcome to come and get their shots here. So other than COVID, we've been really busy this last couple of weeks with grant writing and finishing up the budget. As you can imagine, that's quite a process. But we have submitted some additional grants. As you know, you approved the comprehensive plan. And we also submitted a DOLA grant to pay for half of the cost of Long's Peak. And so we are hopeful that we will be considered for that. It will be a presentation staff will need to make to DOLA in October and hear if they're willing to fund some of that. Also, we have submitted a request to DOLA to extend our staffing grant for our flood recovery team into 2021, now that it appears we will have projects going into 2021. And we need to continue to close out dozens of projects through its final stage, get those final notebooks put together that'll be forever documents. And so we've requested that, waiting to hear back on that one. As you know, we submitted the Land Water Conservation Fund grant for the Ped Bridge and 2 local grants to LCF from the Arts and Humanities Commission. were submitted recently. And then lastly, I have found another grant option for the Second Avenue Bridge. CDOT offers a grant called the Off-System Bridge Grants, and they're looking for projects that can be done in 2021. So I have reached out to them to see if they would match funds, so that if we could get CDOT to fund our $600,000 gap on Second Avenue, then we would be able to do another stormwater project with that DR money. So we have had busy grant writers on staff this last couple of weeks. Feel good about those, and we'll of course let you know, and they'll come to you if you want to accept them if they're awarded. So also want to let people know that, oh, and I have reached out to Dr. Cog to see if they have any funding for $15,000 toward transportation. I think they must be trying to see if they can find something for us. I haven't heard back definitely yet, but we'll keep you posted on that one. We will be offering some winter energy efficiency programs through our relationship with Maine. And so we will be getting those out in newsletters and e-blasts to assist people with programs to help with energy assistance over those winter months. So please keep your eyes on that. I'll make sure Lori Barton is aware of those so she can send people toward that direction as well. So 5 potential development projects in motion right now that we're working with folks on, as well as, that's not including some at Tamburello and some remodeling projects going on downtown. So looks like people are interested in doing some work here in Lyons, expansions, new developments, and keep you posted on those as they happen as well. Any questions?
Any questions for Administrator Simonson? Thank you.
Trustee Rogan has her hand up, sir.
I'm sorry, Trustee Rogan.
That's okay. That's okay. It's not a question. I just want to say great work in getting the weekly COVID testing here. I know that's been a long haul, and I know that Jeff Sayek and the team have been working really hard at it. And so I think that's great. And I hope people take advantage of it. It's really, the thing up the nose really isn't that bad, you guys. I have to say.
Okay. Any other questions for Administrator Simonson? Seeing none, legal update, Counselor?
Thank you, Mary Angelo. There's 3 issues that staff has asked me to look into related to requests by the Board of Trustees for future agenda items and items for discussion. I realize tonight we don't have these items on for general discussion, but I want to give an update on the legal research that I've done to kind of illuminate some of the questions that we've been asked to look into. So the first one is with regards to defaults under the Revolving Loan Fund program. There has been 2 defaults in this program, one with the Fork and one with Wild Styles. The Wild Styles is about $500 default, and the Forks is much larger, about a $9,000, excuse me, about $11,000 or $12,000 is what I have that they owe. Based on the documentation I've received, which is not executed documentation, just the forms that were used for both these projects, there's really a handful of options if the board does want to collect the outstanding amounts. One, each of these applicants is required to sign a securitization agreement. They're required to put up collateral backing their loans. And so I don't know exactly what the collateral was. I don't have the final agreements. That'd be one option available to the board. Another option would be is that if the business themselves either dissolved or no longer in existence, part of the loan agreement was that whoever signed the agreements would be personally responsible for the outstanding balances if they were in default, and both are in default at this point. And so the town could seek to collect from the signatories to both those agreements. So that would be another option available to the board. And of course, the board can always take the option not to collect on these outstanding amounts as well. But I just want to give the board kind of an update on what our research has uncovered so far on, 1, which ones are in default, and then 2, what are the options are available to the board. So we'll need a future discussion item on that to really get into the weeds and what the board would like to do. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview as to what the options are to think about before we can have that discussion. So the next item I wanted to talk about that we discussed at a previous board meeting was the occupancy tax and how that works in Lyons. And so as you may recall, and as is the case with all taxes in any Colorado municipality, it was passed via ballot measure to install an occupancy tax of $2 per room or campsite or rental, essentially. And the way that ballot measure was written, it was for businesses and occupants, not the town itself. And so if the town would want to amend that ordinance as has been suggested, it would have to go to another ballot to do so. And so the much easier, if the town wanted to somehow increase its own fees for occupancy, much easier way to accomplish that would be simply increase the rates administratively to include that $2 rather than going through the process of a ballot measure and having the town tax itself more or less, which is not normally done. But there is another option, which is to increase administratively those fees. And so the third item I wanted to discuss with you tonight, I think I've lost my train of thought. I had three. Let's look what I had written down. Oh, it was shutting off utilities for code violations, specifically STRs, was the third item that I was asked to look into. And I already kind of gave a preview of this research before, but essentially there is no case law in Colorado specifically prohibiting shutting off utilities for code violations. However, in looking at other states' laws, and also speaking with CML, there are several kind of red flags on this. In other states, there must be some sort of due process given for shutting off these utilities, whether it be electric, water, sewer. For in full disclosure, I'm also the regulatory counsel for the Colorado Association of Municipal Utilities, so we kind of deal with these issues all the time. And for investor-owned utilities, they're required to go through a PUC process, and there's guidelines about how you can shut off utilities and very specific due process considerations about how that's done. There is no such laws in Colorado for municipal utilities. Municipal utilities are generally unregulated. There is a process by which there can be a PUC complaint against a municipal utility, but it's generally not used. The PUC prefers to have municipal utilities kind of handle their own problems. And so something that when I spoke to CML and then also speaking with CAMU, that, if we were to pursue this type of option, we wanted a lot of due process considerations given to how it would work, including multiple forms of notice, a hearing process for whether to shut off. And so there would be a lot of upfront work into amending the code in order to make this happen if it was something the board wanted to pursue. Just due to some of the risks that may exist for this type of things. It hasn't been done to CML's knowledge or to my knowledge, and me generally inquiring as to other CAMA members. I know Boulder, there's been some talk of Boulder was considering it for COVID-related issues, shutting off utilities to places where there was a COVID outbreak if they didn't comply with state health orders. According to CML, my own research, we don't think that ever surpassed more than an idea, maybe by a few council members. But however, we're not aware of anyone who has a similar type of arrangement where utilities are shut off for code violations, unless they are directly utility related. That there's so you're breaking utility standards. You didn't put on a backflow preventer. You are causing a danger to the utility system. Then there are such examples, even the Lyons code, of where we may shut off your utilities for that sort of a code violation. But for things that aren't directly utility related, we're just not aware of any example of that. And at least CML has concerns, and in my role as CAMU attorney, I also have some concerns too. And I think we have to be really careful about how we do that. But I think we need a board discussion to see whether it's something we want to pursue. And that's it for my report. I just want to give you some update on those three items that I was asked to research. So,
thank you, Counselor. I need clarification on the process in regard to this second reading on Ordinance 1088, Counselor. I want to give Trustee Rogan the opportunity to make her motion, but I don't understand how we get to that point. Could you explain to me?
Yeah, of course. So it would just run like a regular old second reading where it'd be a staff report, a public hearing. And then once we progress past the public hearing, then we would call for a motion. At that point, Trustee Rogan's motion could be made, or if any other trustee beats her to the punch, they can put up their own motion. I don't think there's going to be much of a staff report at this point, considering we've done this many times. I certainly don't have one at this point. So I think once we get past the public hearing, we can move on to that.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please read item 9 into the record?
Yes, this is the second reading, a public hearing on Ordinance 1088, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, repealing and replacing Chapter 8, Articles 2, and Chapter 11, Article 1, Section 60, and creating a new Chapter 8, Article 4 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning vehicle impoundment, parking, and abandoned vehicle and property enforcement.
Thank you. Counselor said that he didn't have any input in regard to staff. Is there any other staff member that has any input? Madam Administrator?
I guess my only comment is that the changes that were asked for on first reading have been put into this version.
Okay.
And I've been also informed of a couple non-substantive minor changes, which will be in whatever the final draft is. We will have that.
Thank you.
Except we missed one. We were supposed to take out the word destroy.
That's okay. That's okay. So we'll open the public hearing on Ordinance 1088. Would anybody in the public wish to address the Board of Trustees at this time?
You can raise your hand on your computer, or if you are on a phone, you can just acknowledge yourself.
I would trust Mayor Angelo.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Dave Hachimoji, 200 Welch Court, Lyons.
Thank you, sir.
Dear trustees, I would like to comment on the decision of the board to go forward during the September 21st BOT meeting with the second reading of the revised Lyons Parking Ordinance 2020-1088. While Sergeant Chris' concerns regarding abandoned vehicles on town right-of-ways was appreciated, as one who does park their small camp trailer in front of their home, I was alarmed at the 5-2 vote to go forward with the new ordinance and the majority of the board's rationales for doing so. That said, I do applaud trustees Miller and Rogan's level-headed sensibilities in voting against these unnecessary limits on what a resident is able to do or not do. Trustee Miller's comments on why is this now an issue when it's been an accepted practice without tangible negative consequences, and trustees Rogan's thoughts on why you are making things harder on residents during this unsettling time is a good summation that I know is shared by many residents. If you believe that there needs to be more control placed on people and their use of a town right-of-way in front of their home, I think that the permit system proposed by both Miller and Rogan is a decent compromise. With a permit, the town has the ability to curtail the parking of that 26-foot sailboat or to restrict a resident's parking choices to within a certain distance of their home. The prohibiting of visitors of residents who stay in their RVs rather than exposing others or their hosts during this pandemic, or once we can return to hosting our live festival, should be reconsidered. I also ask that the board carefully review each paragraph in the proposed ordinance to limit the unintended consequences that they might propose. For instance, I noticed that paragraph 8-4-10 section 1B says it's unlawful to park a commercial vehicle on a town right-of-way for over 2 hours unless it is providing an immediate service to a home or business. With that language, a Lions resident who brings home their company plumbing or catering truck home at night or for the weekend is thus breaking the law. While I don't think that this is your intent, it is nonetheless an enforceable matter if a neighbor has an axe to grind. Next, I call your attention to how inoperable vehicles are defined in paragraph 11-1-60, and that unlicensed, unregistered vehicles fits into that category. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't our golf carts unregistered and unlicensed? Again, not the intent, but it is an unintended consequence that requires rephrasing. Finally, unless snow removal is what the town wants to engage in which case all vehicles should be prohibited from parking on streets during a winter storm cycle, something I'm opposed to, a parked trailer, RV, or passenger car poses the same issues when it comes to plowing snow. In closing, given the sheriff more tools beyond the Colorado revised statutes to police abandoned vehicles is needed. Adopting this revised parking ordinance to prohibit other historical use behaviors by residents is merely an attempt to perfect Lions, which is a term I use disparagingly. For that, I ask that the BOT rethink its adoption of this overreaching ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else wish to address the Board of Trustees on this matter?
Don Weller.
Your name and address for the record, please.
212 Welch Drive, Lyons.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I also have a small trailer that I park out in front of my house. If this ordinance were passed, I would be forced to park that on my driveway and put my SUV out on the street, which is larger than my trailer. I don't think this is a problem that is of a widespread or importance to the town. I think if we're really looking to make the town safer for our kids and make the streets safer, we should be looking at better speeding enforcement or speed bumps or something like that. I don't think the swapping of our SUV for our small trailer is a solution to a safety problem. Basically, I think this ordinance is trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. So I hope you will reconsider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to address the Board of Trustees?
Yeah, hi, I'd like to speak. My name is Ben Lawhon. I live at 213 Welch Drive.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I've emailed the Board of Trustees and the mayor, so you're well aware of my thoughts on the matter, but I do agree with Dawn and with Dave in terms of our ability to park these reasonable vehicles in front of our homes. Dawn's point is well taken in terms of you're going to be swapping one large vehicle potentially for an even larger vehicle. And so that doesn't seem to be a net gain of any kind. I do believe that a permit system could work in this aspect. It's certainly something that could generate enough revenue to cover its own cost. I mean, Lions registers dogs and you make money off of that at some nominal amount, but it's a process that the town could have to allow this to continue so that people can have access to their property where they can easily park it and that it's safe. We're not paying for offsite storage, and they're just such a benefit for us to have here in town. So I would encourage the trustees to either greatly amend this or not vote in favor of this proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to address the Board of Trustees at this time?
Mayor Angelo, there's a hand raised. Jackie Weiss has her hand raised on the board.
Jackie Weiss, your name and address for the record, please.
Jacqueline Weiss, 527 2nd Avenue.
Go ahead.
There are several reasons why this ordinance as written is a disgrace. First, it's classic. Classist. The median home price in Lyons ranges from $470,000 to $570,000, depending on the source. Many of these homes do not have garages, and downtown, many do not even have driveways, even with the cost of housing being as high as it is. There is no place to put such vehicles for most Lyons residents who live in town, except for the ultra wealthy of huge properties and or garages large enough for a camper or RV. More on why this ordinance is classist. The ordinance would require its residents who already make financial sacrifices to afford to live in Lyons to pay even more money to store their camper or RV in Longmont or Boulder, since no facility exists in Lyons. This proposed ordinance is utterly disgusting considering the already high cost of housing, utilities, and rising taxes in our town. In effect, this would put many voting residents in a position to choose to pay for storage or to give up their camper or RV altogether. A large proportion of people have made sacrifices to live in Lyons, the gateway to the Rockies, to access the mountains in their campers or RVs. That's part of what makes Lyons Lyons. When things get busy in town with tourism and festivals, many locals use their campers and RVs on the weekend to get some much needed respite from it all. This ordinance would add additional pressure and difficulty to such outings. Another reason to vote no on Ordinance 1088 is that there's a global pandemic going on that has caused upheaval in all aspects of life. Do the trustees really feel that right now is the best time to cause even more unrest in people's lives? We know that the town is looking for ways to take action on abandoned vehicles in the streets. That being said, current code allows anything not currently registered or drivable to be towed. The current code allows anything that is a safety risk or nuisance to be addressed as well. So why make it harder on everyone who lives in town to access their campers and RVs, which they use? We do not need Lyons trustees to become the Lyons Colorado HOA. Perhaps the town can revisit the ordinance and rework it to allow residents to park campers and RVs in the street in front or adjacent to the property they live at. Size restrictions for large vehicles sounds like a reasonable approach, but putting an ordinance in effect that bans all RVs and campers is unreasonable and insensitive and classist. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to address the Board of Trustees at this time? Madam Clerk? Do you have any additional comments to read into the record?
No, sir, no one emailed me comments on that. The one that, no, Mr. DeSalvo's comments were for another agenda item, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion at this time. Trustee Rogan.
I have a motion. I would like to move to continue the public hearing to date certain November 2nd in order to give us some time to think about amendments that would make this ordinance more just, equitable, and while still enhancing safety for the town.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second as stated by Trustee Rogan. Discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yeah, I'm fine with continuing this to November 2nd. And I did have several amendments that I was prepared to make tonight to what the best term is, soften, I guess, the original draft of the ordinance, including one that was going to address size of vehicles that could be parked on town streets. And as I mentioned at first reading, also to allow to take care of the people who visit Lyons residents, relatives, friends, whatever, to give some period of time for them to be able to use RVs and park outside. But I guess I have a question of the town attorney. Is there a way, while during this intervening time, if we do this, for proposed amendments to be not just circulated among the board? That's always been a problem with me, especially with these remote meetings during COVID. And it used to, if we showed up at a meeting and we were going to propose an amendment to a pending ordinance, we would make copies in advance and we'd hand them out to whoever was in the room. We handed out to our fellow board members and the clerk and the attorney and the press and whatever. You can't physically do that anymore. Between now and then, would it be possible to like draft amendments and have them, give them to the town clerk and have them like post it as proposed amendments before the next meeting. I just, it's hard to do this in between meetings, and I'm kind of fishing for how to do that.
Counselor?
We just need to be careful not to create a dialogue which would constitute a meeting. I mean, if everyone wants to send the clerk, here's all my proposed amendments, and the clerk can post them prior to the meeting, maybe that's possible. I mean, you can all, if you wanted to, say to, the public through whatever means you want to, here's my proposed amendment, you can always do that.
Right.
But I circulating things among there can't be any back and forth. It'd just be, here it is, don't talk about it basically until the board meeting itself.
I assume we could talk one-on-one with another trustee.
Correct. Yeah.
Not a email or Facebook or anything.
If you wanted to call Trustee Lowell and talk about your
Right.
amendment, that's your prerogative, so long as it's you and Trustee Lowell, not a third. So always two, no, never three.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Rogan?
Thank you. Attorney Dittman, is it a possibility to have some sort of public workshop in the interim where we could, for example, bring our proposed amendments and discuss them and take public feedback?
So long as that workshop is noticed, you could do that. I mean, nothing proposed at that workshop there would be no amendments at the workshop, right? There'd be no official action. You could just say, here are my amendments and we're going to talk about them. But it would not be part of the actual ordinance itself until it was at a public meeting with a public hearing. And then where amendments could be proposed and voted on.
I wonder if Mayor Pro Tem Browning would be okay with that scenario.
Sure.
More
better.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just said, sure, that would give an opportunity for public input. And even though we couldn't decide anything and swap ideas among trustees ourselves, the more we hear from the public, the better. So in fact, one of the amendments I had to do was going to propose tonight specifically came from a couple of members of the public, and I thought it was a good suggestion and I was going to make it. So getting those in an informal workshop would, I think, be helpful.
Any further comments?
Mayor Angela, the town administrator, has had her hand raised for some time.
Excuse me, Administrator Simonson.
I was going to suggest that at this point, we don't have a workshop planned for October 19th. So if you wanted to do it as one where you would include public, involvement, we could have a workshop on this issue, take that input, and then actually put it on as an agenda item if you wanted to that night, to be able to see which items you were interested in. As long as, the agenda doesn't get too full that night, we could add that in. Also, I'd just like to comment that apparently all of these comments and input are only going to the board. Staff aren't getting any of this. So it would be helpful if you guys could forward them to staff, or if the public would also include some staff, so that I can get them by Sergeant Christ and by the attorney and by code enforcement, at the same time. So if you, because I didn't get any comments on 1088, none. So, yeah, so if you guys would forward what you're getting, that would just help us already vet some of those comments versus taking time in a meeting to do it.
I apologize, Madam Administrator, and I will forward you many
You don't have to apologize. I just
emails that I received regarding 1088. I'll do that for sure. Any other comments?
Is there an interest in hosting a workshop on the 19th? Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, I'll just plan that at this point anyway, unless something else comes up that's emergency.
Pending vote on the motion on the floor.
Yes, obviously. Any other comments? If not, Madam Clerk, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
No.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1. Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes, consent agenda item 1 is resolution 2020-152, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Town of Lyons and the Lyons Fire Protection District regarding provision of emergency services. Item 2 is resolution 2020-154, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a Fifth Amendment to the construction agreement with Asphalt Specialties Company Incorporated for the roadway repairs flood recovery project. Item 3 is resolution 2020-155, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, in support of the submittal of an application for a DOLA Energy Mineral Impact Assistance Fund grant for partial funding of the Longs Peak Drive Capital Improvement Project. Item 4 is resolution 2020-156, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving an agreement with Ken Spencer for the purchase of 8 Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company water stocks. Item 4 is a letter of support for Boulder County Watershed Health Action Plan grant application. Item 6 is resolution 2020-157, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving an agreement with Deborah Boyd Zick, Bruce Eric Boyd, and David Brian Boyd for the purchase of 1 Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company water. Number 7 is the October accounts payable. Number 8 is the September 21st, 2020 BOT meeting minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Are there any items that a trustee would wish to remove from the consent agenda? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Items 1, 4, and 6.
1, 4, and 6. Anybody else have an item they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the omission of 1, 4, and 6?
I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items 1, 4, and 6.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mayor Pro Tem Browning, resolution 2020-152.
Yes. Item 1, with regard to the potential IGA with the fire district. I pull this because I really think it's important, and I compliment those responsible, who I believe are primarily Mayor Angelo and Fire Chief Pcdc, for moving this forward. Part of the reason for pulling it is really just to shine a little bit of light on it and point out how important cooperation between the town and the fire district is, in particular with respect to potentially serving areas that might be added later into town. That had been one of the stumbling blocks, or I guess points of potential disagreement between the town and the fire district for quite some time. There were discussions in the context of the potential Eastern Corridor URA area, the Urban Renewal Authority area, which is split between the Lyons Fire Protection District and the Hygiene Fire Protection District. And there were discussions about, originally it was assumed that eventually if the town annexed that area, that the Lyons Fire District would assume responsibility for the hygiene area. But then that became a problem with suggestions that that was going to be very difficult to do. And in fact, the URA ended up spending like $5,500, I think, to have its financial consultant redo the numbers to as to potential revenue to include the Hygiene Fire District instead of the Lyons Fire District. And this has been a real issue for a while. And this seems to be great progress on that. And I guess besides just commending that we could potentially start working around that roadblock, I also had a question. I saw that Chief Pcdc was online. I hope he's still here. Or maybe Mayor Angelo could contribute to this too. Have there been discussions with the Hygiene Fire District, and are they aware of this and understand that this could be coming down the road? I hope so.
Chief Pcdc, I'd let you answer that, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor Pro Tem, we have spoke about it very briefly, but nothing has been suggested or talked about in terms of it coming to any fruition. So I wanted to make sure that the town was on board before I sit down with Chief Trevick, Cody Trevick from Hygiene, and so that we can make sure that we're working together as always. We've just increased our auto aid agreement with them. And so I think this is just another step in that direction, sir.
Okay, it's good to know that they've been at least notified that this might be coming. And I think it makes sense in the long run if the town does end up annexing all or most of the eastern corridor, that you wouldn't have two fire districts splitting that territory. It seems to be very inefficient and potentially expensive. And the town is used to working with the Lyons Fire Protection District in a number of areas, and working with one fire district instead of two makes perfect sense to me. There are a lot of issues to be addressed out in the eastern corridor, particularly with respect to the URA revenue stream and that type of thing. But this gets us part of the way there on something that really seemed to be somewhat of an impasse for a while. So I wanted to commend you and Mayor Angelo and any others who had worked on this for taking these steps to move us forward.
Well, as always, sir, we look forward continuing to work with the board on a number of areas, and the lure is just one of them. So we appreciate your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for Chief or comments?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Chief Pcdc, thank you for working with Mayor Angelo on this. And while I agree with Mayor Pro Tem's statements of it's good to grow, but as it indicates in the obligation of the fire district to grow with Lyons, the 4.5, 5 years I've been on the board, and I understand it's gone on longer, growth upwards has been somewhat of a challenge in Lyons. So I like to I don't mean to put you on the spot and get you on the record, but I'm doing that to you, so I apologize if that bothers you. But we've had people try to build buildings to increase our town revenues, employ people to, with businesses and living up top. It's that ladder truck thing. As the new chief, what are your commitments to working with us in doing something in the very near future along those lines? You're muted.
Thank you. First and foremost is the safety of the residents and people that visit our community. And so I think when we look at new buildings, we want to make sure that we're able to provide the adequate fire protection, and whatever they may be. And there's numbers of ways to do that. With waters, sprinkling systems, on and on. So we will work hand in hand with the town to try and come to an agreement on what's going to be best. But first and foremost, we will keep the public safety and any of our community members, as well as our visitors to our community, first and foremost.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Resolution 2020-156, Mayor Pro Tem.
Should we, first, I move that we adopt resolution 2020-152 approving the IGA with the fire district.
We do take them one at a time. Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2020-152. Is there no further discussion? I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse. Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
Resolution 2020-152 passes unanimously. Discussion on Resolution 2020-156, Mayor Pro Tem.
2020-156 and 2020-157 are really related to each other. And I think I understand what happened from the staff memos. Originally, the BOT had authorized the purchase of 7 Lake McIntosh shares, but there weren't 7 Lake McIntosh shares, just that number available. They were only available as part of a block of 9. We discussed that. We authorized the purchase of 9, but apparently that block of 9 became unavailable for circumstances that weren't within the town's control. And now we have the possibility of purchasing a block of 8 and a single share, if I'm reading right. And I guess I just wanted the board to discuss, since we've discussed this several times, do we want to buy 8 plus 1, or do we just want to buy 8 because that was closer to the original 7? And I guess my preference would be to buy the 8 and forego the 1, but that I don't think it's a huge deal. But I thought since we discussed this several times, it merited discussion instead of just doing it by consent. So I defer to comments anybody else might want to make in that respect.
I agree that it warrants discussion. And I think that since the original intent was to purchase 7, that 8 is closer to 7 than 9 is.
We're good at math.
It is to 9, yes.
No, it's just logic. I don't think that at this point we need the additional share, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think that Lake McIntosh shares are so rare that we need to make the initial investment at this point. I think that they'll be available in the future, and I don't think that they'll be astronomically expensive and go up in price like CBT shares can. That's my opinion also, Mayor Pro Tem Browning. So I would move to, I'm not making a motion, but I would prefer that we approve Resolution 2020-156 and not approve Resolution 2020-157. Any other comments by board members?
I would concur.
Trustee Waugh,
I also concur.
Trustee Rogan, Trustee Caravas.
I would say we've gone back and forth with staff and given them directions, and now we're giving them directions to go another opposite direction. I'm going to go with sticking to what we told staff and ask them to do, is grab the 9. That's what I'll vote for.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I'm in favor of the 8. If you'd entertain a motion, then I would move to approve Resolution 2020-156 to enter into an agreement to purchase 8 Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company water stocks from Ken Spencer.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we need to have separate votes on
Right.
it.
No, we know that. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 2020-156 as stated. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
Resolution 2020-156 passes unanimously. Do I hear a motion on resolution 2020-157?
I would move that we not approve resolution 2020-157 to buy an additional Lake McIntosh water share.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second as stated by Mayor Pro Tem Brown to not approve resolution 2020-157. Any comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
No.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-1. General business, discussion on proposed resolution, establishing a board's staff relations advisory committee and setting procedures for such committee. Staff?
Staff, this was an item that was carried over from our action items that Mayor Pro Tem Browning and Trustee Waugh put together. At this point, I didn't have it as a resolution because it hadn't been discussed yet. So if we want to have that discussion and gear it up for a resolution at our next meeting, we sure can.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Browning, would you like to discuss this?
Yes, the board appointed Trustee Waugh and I as a subcommittee to work on these matters. And I guess it's not on the docket in the form of a resolution, but it is, we drafted in the form of a resolution and tried to cover the various items in there. And I had some reservations about doing this, and I still have a few. It gets a little bureaucratic, but I think that our hope was really that having such an advisory committee in place would really have a prophylactic effect, and in most cases obviate the need for even a meeting. And this would be creating a committee that only meets when necessary, and one would hope that it would not be necessary very often, if at all, because if there's a problem with a board member potentially interfering with staff, or staff doing something that the code assigns to the board, that in both those cases, people would think twice and be reticent about taking those actions. And it also addresses members of the public who might have an issue with non-responsiveness. And if a member of the public says, hey, I sent you 2 emails over the past 3 weeks and I haven't heard anything back, and I know there's this committee I could take it to, that maybe that would produce a response. So it's really supposed to be kind of a preventative measure was our hope. And I'm always sort of naturally reluctant to create new committees, but we've talked about it at length, and I don't want to repeat the discussion of past instances where problems like this have arisen. And this was our suggestion about a way to possibly deal with them and to hopefully prevent them in the future. And that's where it came from. And I defer to Trustee Waugh on any comments he wishes to make.
Do you have any additional comments, Trustee Waugh?
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Browning, and I think he put it very eloquently that this is, the idea is to not have this committee have to take action, but it's really just a communication conduit. So sometimes I think we get into to our own versions of what's happening, or maybe people aren't aware that communication isn't occurring as it needs to, or what have you. So I think the goal of this is that this committee may never bring anything to the board, because it's just a way and an avenue for people to open the lines of communication. So that's the intent, but if it needs to do more, it has the ability to do so. That's really all I have to add.
Thank you. In a meeting this afternoon with Administrator Simonson, she pointed out to me that staff had no input into the whereases or any of the sections or the formation of the Board Staff Relations Advisory Committee. So I would suggest that staff take the opportunity to submit their inputs into this resolution. And I hope that nobody has an objection to that. I have a difficult time imagining that staff would not have any input into this resolution, to be perfectly honest with you. So I would appreciate if staff would make their contribution to this resolution, come to a consensus with the subcommittee, and bring it before the board in a more complete and comprehensive resolution. That's my recommendation, but I think it's a great idea. I sincerely do. What is the pleasure of the board? I mean, do we agree? Do we
I
not
have no
agree?
problem with that. Makes sense to me.
Okay. All right then, Madam Administrator, and whatever staff that you feel is necessary to make contributions to this resolution to make it more comprehensive, I'd appreciate that you do that.
Okay, thank you. We'll get it. We'll schedule a time to get together with the subcommittee and discuss some adjustments to it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read item 12, number 2 into the record? My voice is going.
Yes, this is a request from John Calvin to connect to the Town of Lyon sewer system for service to 407 Steamboat Valley Road.
Staff.
Hello, trustees. This is Paul Glasgow. We were brought this request again, just to bring it to the board. We had previously reviewed this with the previous board. We don't feel that the town has a mechanism with which to extend sewer without extending water outside of the town boundary within the code. And so we, the last board decided that John would have to annex in order to extend sewer or water. While we do feel that extending, can be better than a septic system in many cases, it's not something that we can recommend because it's against the code. And in general, most municipalities extend their boundaries as they extend their utilities. In some cases, other municipalities enter into a pre-annexation agreement where they extend their utilities with the provision that if and when a property can annex, it will. This property that John has is in the rural, I think it's rural reserve area. It's not in the municipal influence area that the town and the county have agreed on will be annexed in the town of Lyons, Boulder County IGA. In order for it to be annexed, that IGA would have to be opened. And this area would then have to be changed to municipal influence area. And that requires the substantial investment of time from the county as well as the town. The town typically does open the IGA after a comprehensive plan. And so we foresee doing that in the future. So just to get back to the actual property, John came to the at 407 Steamboat Road, came to the town and asked if this should be in the town. He looked at several development plans at one point and then applied for a building permit with the county. For a single family residence at the end of Vasquez Court, and with a barn on the site. So it's kind of a rural residential area. He wants to put in a driveway onto Vasquez Court. Previously, our engineer had said that is fine to connect the driveway, but we have never given permission for sewer and water. So John came just to discuss whether apparently he could connect to sewer, and our understanding is no, not at this time, unless the code was changed. That's my report.
Any other additional staff information?
I guess I'll add something just for those who want to see this in the code. This
Go ahead,
appropriate section is 13.4.1.10, which is service for property outside town boundaries with regard to the sewer system in particular. And in section A, it talks about the general policy of sewer extensions. This is the policy of the town to provide wastewater services to properties outside the town only where the following conditions are met or satisfied. One is the property is served by metered town water services, and two, the extension of services, the provision of services conforms and complies with requirements for applicable wastewater services for properties within the town, except as otherwise provided by this section. Well, the problem here is that there can't be water service without it being annexed into the town. So having not been able to meet number one of this section, you can also not get sewer. So that's the problem, where it's not possible for the town to provide sewer service unless section 13.4.1.10 were to be modified.
Any questions by the Board of Trustees? Trustee Lowell.
Yes, I have a question for Director Glasgow. I'm reading through John Calvin's letter of June 5th, 2019. I guess that was his previous request, right? He has, this is not a new letter, but before you answer, there's two things in it that I want you to address. He says that in exchange for connecting to the town's sewer and water at no cost, which means to me no tap fees, he would provide an easement in order to improve water pressure for the residents on Vasquez Court. Is water pressure an issue on Vasquez Court? And how would we propose to solve that without this easement?
I can start. I'm not sure if Aaron Kaplan is here. He may be able to answer it better. But we know it's an issue. And while this was one of the solutions proposed in our 2016 water CIP, it is being looked at in different manners. So I'll turn it over to Aaron, who will be able to address it more appropriately.
So in general, with the water system, having a looped water line is helpful for both pressure and for water quality. It keeps the chlorine flowing and you don't have it just stagnating up someplace where it would have to have a blow off. So from the very beginning, since Vasquez was developed, it's been something that could be improved upon. The looping plan that had been first thought about was trying to connect Vasquez and Horizon. So you would actually have to go through 2 additional properties to do that loop. I've also seen discussion of actually trying to loop it further down. And so you would come across Vasquez, pick up Horizon and come down to the 4th Avenue cul-de-sac to try to loop it more than just up at the top. Because you are doing a small loop, and while that has some benefits, the cost to benefit there would have to really be looked at in further detail. But it does sound like it would have some benefit. Again, at this point, we could possibly do a smaller loop where we brought Vasquez down to the top of Steamboat Valley Road. So you would have a loop there that could help with some of the pressure, but that is still all on the same line, with most of that being based on pressure coming all the way up Steamboat Valley and then trying to help at the top. Otherwise, you would have to have easements across the additional properties to get in Horizon. But it can also, again, help with the quality. And so doing that loop would help with that aspect. Even the small loop would help for that.
Thank you.
Were there any other additional positive aspects to the proposal, Madam Administrator?
As we
Yes,
discussed.
you, Victoria.
Oh, as we discussed earlier, Mayor, this topic came before the previous board with a different model with water and sewer in exchange. At this point, Mr. Calvin, as my understanding is, he's just asking to connect to the sewer. So as pretty much all code allows, I think that section specifically says the board can make exceptions as they deem appropriate. But it's really up to you. I know Mr. Calvin is on the call tonight, and he is the one who apparently made this request to you, Mayor Angelo. So I don't know if you have more information you want to add.
I don't. The information that I'm looking for the Board of Trustees to realize is his idea of contributing to mitigating water coming down that watershed.
Yes, in previous discussions with Mr. Calvin, he's aware that we need additional storm retention and for the Steamboat Valley drainage area, and his property is one of the locations that could occur on. And previously he was open to having those discussions with us if we were willing to work with him on the water sewer issue. At this point, I don't know if that still would be considered by him if we worked with him on the sewer.
Okay. Any other questions?
Paul, has he said anything to you about the storm detention recently? Or Aaron?
Oh, just that when we brought it to the board the last time, he was willing to consider an MOA to at least work with the town in the future with regard to the southeast portion of his property where there's a depression right next to Steamboat Valley Road.
Any further questions?
I do.
Oh, excuse me. Trustee Garvis.
Question for either Mr. Kaplan or Mr. Glasgow. Basically, to acquire land to put a loop in, what's the running cost these days to acquire land, pay for the land, and then the time needed to sit there and negotiate all that? What's that cost roughly these days?
That would be
I don't
hard to
have
say.
the land cost or easement.
Yeah, we did a cost estimate the last time, but it was, and there was an estimate in the 2016 CIP. I'll see if I can find that. But I think we updated it the last time. Let me see if I can find that.
Right. I recall most recently the engineer said that the loop will not provide the same benefit that was initially thought. And the original loop also crossed not only Mr. Calvin's, but also the neighbor to the east before it went south on to meet up with Horizon, for lack of a better word there. But in this case, this would not be a difficult infrastructure issue. He would be able to connect the lines already there. It certainly would help our wastewater plant to have more residential waste going into it. But it's really purely the call of the board, since the previous board heard the situation a couple of times and declined his request. So we wanted to bring it back to the board to see if there is an interest in sewer only instead of the water connection, in hopes that our next IGA, this property might be able to change its label as rural preservation, and at some point might be able to be developed differently than what it is currently.
What does that process entail after our comp plan's done to open that IGA, as was mentioned, is common? How long a process is that?
It's a long process. The IGA usually takes a year or two to negotiate, and it's on a schedule unless we request it before it expires. It has an expiration date right now. As you guys know, there is potential. There was a new commissioner elected last year, and there'll be another this November. So we will have a new majority of commissioners to work through a new IGA with. So there is no relationship with that new person yet, or it takes a while. The last one took a couple of years.
Okay, so on top of that 2 years, how long will it take us, this board, to get our comp plan finalized?
A year.
So we're at 3 years minimum?
Yes.
Okay.
But my understanding is the county has told him they will approve this, him connecting to our sewer, if he has permission from you to do so.
I understand that. Thank you.
And the CIP had it at 318,000, the 2016 CIP to loop that water line. So
Do you
I
have a
would put it
breakdown
more
of
realistically,
property acquisition
400,
in that?
500,000.
That wasn't that for construction as well, not just the land purchase?
Right, yes. That included everything in their estimate.
Do you have the breakdown of what that, the land acquisition cost is in that cost, that total cost?
Might be in here.
An answer to Trustee Caravas's question?
I was going through the CIP. I didn't have it right in front.
I'm looking for the last time.
Yeah, here I have it then. The breakdown, easement acquisition was 42,000. The pipe was 112,000. Boring 45,000. Reconnections 9,000.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So as it was mentioned in the opening explanation, then if a person's asking for a water or sewer tap in trade, not have to pay for it in trade-offs of the land, would a water tap or a sewer tap cost 42,000? I'm assuming no, based on what our LMC, our code has in our current code for water for sewer taps. So it's just something to consider in the possibility of water detention, or excuse me, water retention coming down, one of the largest areas of concern. I know we on the UEB, even as you were the director of the UEB, the chair at one time, that watershed is a major source of our waters coming down through Old Town and across Main Street into our businesses on the heavy rain. So that's just something to kind of get out there for everybody to beat around our heads. Thank you, guys.
Any further questions? What is the pleasure of the board?
Mayor Nick, this is John Calvin. If I could speak.
You may, sir.
Okay, just to clear up, I'm not asking to connect to the sewer without paying a sewer tap fee. That was an old discussion with Victoria, and I believe Paul was involved in that a while back, where we were discussing different options with the property. But I'm proposing to pay a sewer tap fee, and yes, I'm offering the easement that goes on the top of the property, so on the north side of the property, and goes all the way down Steamboat Valley Road, so it makes the loop. That road, the other property owners have a right to access it, but the majority of that road is on my property. And, I think it can be looped within my property there. Also, yeah, on the drainage, I did offer that. So whatever you guys need to do for the drainage, I had told Victoria in the beginning, and with each discussion that we had, I want to work with the town in whatever the town needs there. I did hear from some citizens today. I am here in town, and I'm from Dallas, but on that road that do not have water pressure at all. Upstairs is what they said. Gentleman's name is Daniel, and he lives right across the street. And, I told him, well, I'm offering it to the town, but we'll see what the town does. But as far as water versus sewer, yes, I did ask for water originally. And what I learned from Paul is that was not possible. And that was okay, because I had a well. And I'm just proposing to build my one house right now. And so then I asked for sewer. Now, I put it on the application with Boulder County because it was suggested that I put it on the application that way. I wasn't presuming anything, that would happen with the town, but either you turn in sewer plans right now and we move forward that way, or you check it off this way and we can move forward that way. So that's why I turned it in that way. The driveway connection is not needed according to the county, or a letter about that anymore. That was originally needed, but they just decided that they did not need that I could drive onto my property that way. But Victoria briefly touched on any future development IGA concerns, bringing the property out of the IGA. I think my property could be looked at in 2022. The longer term IGA, I think, is like 2030 or something like that. And, I would be willing to work with the town on whatever the town wanted to do. But my concern or goal right now is just to build this house. And yeah, I would like to hook onto the sewer, and I would like to exchange the water easement for that, and in the use of the lower end of the property for detention or retention, however it would work best engineering wise. And I guess the issue of what might happen to it in the future, the rest of the property. All I can say is that like I've always said to Victoria, I'd be willing to work with you guys, but I don't really have any plans for anything, on it. I'm not going to be coming to you guys really with anything on it right now. Yeah. So that's it. And if there's any questions for me, I'm here. Otherwise, I'll mute off so you guys can talk. But I just wanted to let you know what I was offering, and I am offering fees.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we got a few more facts from John. And I'll ask again, what is the pleasure of the board? Mayor Pro Tem Browning?
The town has a strict policy in its code of not extending service outside town limits. And in order to waive that policy, there should be some clear benefit to the town, I think. And the town is a long way from being able to afford to do the construction of that loop up there. We can't even figure out how to pay for our bridges. This is about the third time I think that this property owner has come asking for things from the town. Each time the property owners I've heard from along Vasquez Court have not been thrilled with the proposals. I heard from one of them today. There's no agreement here to annex the property into town or to try to annex it. I saw a reference in the cover memo to the possibility of shaving enough of off of this property in some form to get around the 5-acre rule, which was really something that when this came before the PCDC, before that possibility was mentioned, and the PCDC was not receptive to it at all, because essentially the citizens, although the 5-acre rule is actually in an ordinance passed by a town board many years ago, as Mayor Angelo could probably inform us better than I could, it was done in response to citizen input and pressure that anything over 5 acres would have to have a citizen's vote. And even the prospect of somebody whittling away a small piece of property to do an end run around the 5-acre rule would concern me when you deal with a citizen, at least something that was done in response to citizen input. We don't have any money to pay for a loop right now. I see no real benefit to the town to add one tap fee and one sewer connection. That's not going to make a material difference financially or operation of the sewer plant. All this about the potential drainage system improvements and whether there's going to be an annexation and whether there's going to be an easement for a loop. That should all be negotiated as part of an annexation agreement. That's the time to take that up, not one at a time, not make an exception to the code that exists right now. We're going to have to amend the code to do this, and I worry about the precedential effect of that too. Are there other properties out there that would want to do something similar? So Mr. Calvin is able to build on this property, build a house there with a well and a septic system. I don't have that much concern about another septic tank being up there. The county's pretty strict about those. There's houses with wells and septic tank all up in that area, all along Eagle Ridge Drive above the town. I don't see that makes a material difference either. I think we should apply the code as written. I think there are good reasons for that policy. If somebody wants to try to annex and we put all this in an annexation agreement, might make some sense. But to do it one piece at a time, of do a driveway here, do a sewer connection there, as the staff and the attorney have said, it doesn't fit the code, and I'm not in favor of proceeding with an exception for it.
Trustee Caravas.
I'm going back and forth on this one. I agree with Pro Tem Browning. With our code, it's strict. I would like to consider looking at this though for the possibility of easements for water looping for that area of town where it is. We do have quality issues and we do have pressure issues. So like I said, I'm on the fence on this one. I'd like to look at it, but I definitely agree with Mayor Pro Tem that it probably should be of a larger annexation package and do it all at once, get it all done. So that we don't set a precedent for other boards that if there are other properties close like this, that the boards get flooded with it. So like I said, I'm on a fence on both ways. I'd like to consider it more, look at it more, a little deeper, see what staff can come up with. But again, our code is our code and we've got it there and probably needs to be followed in unless we open up an annexation package and negotiate it out.
Trustee Rogan.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Browning. I think it's, I think it would set a precedent that could be extremely problematic in the future, and it should be negotiated as part of the annexation agreement.
Trustee Waugh.
I concur with Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Trustee Lowell.
Same here. I agree with Pro Tem Browning.
Trustee Miller.
I can't say that I think any differently than the rest of them. I do just have one question for Administrator Simonson, did you say that there was a provision in the code that allowed for board decision on this? Did you say that right?
Yeah, there's a clause in the utility code. I don't have it in front of me. Maybe Brandon does since he's online, but I know it is in reference to water, that if there's and I think it's sewer as well, but if there's a benefit to the community, that the board can make an individual exception as they see, as they deem appropriate.
I don't
mean, I
see a provision that's specific would address the situation to that regard. The town administrator can find it, but I've looked and I have not seen it.
Glasgow has his hand up. Yeah. He might know where it's at.
You're on mute, Paul.
Paul, you're still muted.
Sorry, I pressed the space bar. It said it went off. There is a provision in the code, but it's only for those that had a benefit before a certain date. And I think it's in 13.
Okay.
Yeah, there's that one, and I'm not aware of any other one that's more general. The number of provisions have exceptions that for the board of trustees to consider, like connections to public utilities, for example, within the town, or the size and quality of public utilities that are being connected can be waived by the board of trustees. But okay. I'm not seeing anything that would specifically address this issue. I believe the code would have to be changed.
And that's fine. I didn't have it in front of me, but I know it's in there a few times. There's exceptions can be made, but okay.
Yeah, there's a number of exceptions, but with regard to this provision in particular, I don't think there is an ability to waive it.
Okay.
And the reason for is there just he doesn't want to annex, or he can't annex because of the IGA?
He can't because of the IGA.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I concur with the rest of my fellow trustees then.
Well, my first answer to John when he communicated with me is that he would have to annex. I think that's unfortunate. I don't think that he's the kind of person that would shave a half acre off of his lot to get away with a 5 acre annexation rule. I think that he will build his house. I think he'll just have to have his septic system and his well, and I welcome him to town. I met with him, I met his family, and I think he'll be an asset to the community. I think the board has made their statement, and I think that the request is denied.
And if I could just add a thank you to the board for listening to it. I was not proposing to chop off part of the property, as you just stated. Yeah, and
no selling
it's not probably an easy thing to do either. You'd have to get approval from the county. But the other thing is, with the council members were talking about annexation, and once you put in, the reason I brought forward the septic field right now, or the question of it, is once I put in this leach field, according to the county, it is a large area. And so this would not be something in the future that we would come back to annexing, unless we were talking about ripping out, the leach field at that time, and then, and then tapping at that time. So that's why I was doing it like this. I wasn't trying to piecemeal it or or anything unusual. It just simply would not work in the future that way. It'd be a very, very, very expensive thing to do. So, but I will move forward with the plans, as you said, Mayor, and I appreciate you guys listening to it. The comments that I had come back many times, those were over separate issues that the town had proposed at that time over development. It wasn't over this. You know, so this is truly a new issue that came up during COVID. So thank you very much.
Welcome to town, John.
Thank you.
Take care.
Madam Clerk, could you please read item 13, number 1 into the record?
Yes, discussion of future agenda items. Number 1 is discuss BOD surcharges, which was recommended by Trustee Watt.
Since this is a different format, does staff have anything to offer in this regard before I move on to Trustee Watt?
Right, I wasn't sure how the format would go, sort of with Mayor Pro Tem Browning's question.
So as a reminder, this discussion tonight is not on the substance of BOT surcharges at all. It's whether or not this is merited for discussion on a future agenda. That's the sole purpose of what it's on the agenda for tonight.
So we're only to make a decision on whether it's going to be a future agenda item?
That's correct.
I think it's an important enough issue to be a future agenda item. Does the Board of Trustees agree? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I agree. I would like to for the UEB to discuss it and share their views before we put it on the agenda, because the whole the whole surcharge ordinance originally started with the UEB, and they made a recommendation and then the board revised it. And some things have changed since then. We now have, as of September 30th, I think, testing reports in place for the 2 high strength surcharge businesses. And the whole impetus for the high strength for the surcharge at the time was that the town was running the wastewater plant 5 days a week instead of 3, and the estimated annual operating costs were $50,000 more than I think what was anticipated or something. And so that's what it was designed to cover. Things have changed at the wastewater plant somewhat. There's a new centrifuge. We've got new ordinances. The numbers are down. So a number of the things that led to the surcharge ordinance have changed. And since the UEB was the one that brought all those to our attention to begin with, I'd really like to see the UEB talk about this and potentially bring a recommendation, along with the utilities director, of course, to the board, and we would have their input at the time we considered it. But I think it is important.
I think that's a great idea. Trustee Caravas, would you please speak with Chairman Barnes, if you could schedule that as a discussion at the next UEB meeting?
I can, but the agenda is already out.
Okay.
But I will see what we can do.
And we'll wait until, because I think that's a great idea. We'll wait until we receive that information from the UEB. Is that acceptable with the rest of the board? Okay. Identify town parcels that could be used for RV parking. Does that warrant a future agenda discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
This is Trustee Waz, so I'd defer to him.
Okay, Trustee Waz.
I'd like to slightly modify this request. I would like to see, or I'd like to see perhaps the PCDC be involved in an accounting of all town-owned property and a use matrix of what can and cannot occur on each of those parcels. I think there's still some gaps between interpretations as it regards to with regard to some of the covenants. And I think PCDC is really a great place to do some background research. And I will work with the PCDC because this is an area of interest to me personally. But at this time, I think it would behoove us better to get that background information I think it was misconstrued that it was just the buyout properties that I was suggesting for RVs. I think there's a lot of different land and a lot of different regulations and opportunities with what we could do, including perhaps an RV storage area for those that maybe don't want to store them on the streets or whatever the case may be. So that would be my recommendation, and I look forward to the feedback from the rest of the board members.
Do we favor the PCDC bringing recommendations to the Board of Trustees regarding this subject? How does the board feel about that? Trustee Lowe?
That seems like quite a task for the PCDC, and I imagine it's going to take them a fair amount of time to prepare this catalog. If we're talking about the buyout properties, I think we've got a pretty good handle on that. But some of the other properties have less clear restrictions or covenants on them. Yeah, if they want to take it on, fine. But I don't expect to see this for a half a year or more.
Trustee Law, what is your thought on that in regard to Trustee Lowell's contention that the buyout properties are easy to inventory, but what are your thoughts about the other properties that we may need to inventory?
I think Trustee Lowell is accurate. It's going to take a while to get a comprehensive understanding of these properties, but I think, it's an effort worth doing. I think we have significant inventory. We can start at a course level and focus in and do broad categorizations perhaps. But I mean, I think even with some of the buyout properties, there's still a little bit of discussion of what can happen and can't happen there. And there may be potential value that's yet to be unlocked.
So my understanding from you would be that you don't mind that it might take a little while with a PCDC that's tackling a comprehensive plan and zoning issues at the time?
I don't have a problem with that. I think the PCDC has a lot of important things to do, and this needs to be prioritized in their overall set of priorities.
Mayor, Trustee Rogan and Trustee Miller have had their hands up.
Good, my screen's dark, so sometimes I miss a hand. Trustee Rogan.
I think inventorying all of the properties in town is an excellent idea. I think it can be a foundation for the future. I'm surprised that we don't already have an inventory like that, and I think it will be extremely useful. So even if it takes a while, it's going to be worth it for boards to come as well.
Excellent point. Trustee Miller.
Oh, we do have a list of properties, just so you know, that we own. He wants it more detailed into a use matrix, like the zone and.
Right, I misspoke.
I would agree with Trustee Rogan and Trustee Waugh. I think that it's important that we know what we potentially can do with the area properties that we have, not necessarily just the buyout properties. There's many other properties. And just off the top of my head, I think of the Apple Valley property defunct plant that we have that is sitting there rotting. Potentially that could be torn down and made into a spectacular RV park on the river or something to that effect. So yeah, I think that that's a great idea, and I think PCDC should take a look at it. And I also think it fits within the comprehensive plan also.
So I would suggest, Madam Administrator, that you provide the information that you have on hand. I think it will expedite the process and give the PCDC a leg up on exactly what we're searching for.
Yeah, I think once they can identify what all they want. I think staff could actually put some time in and get the base, as he said, the course overview of it, and then the planning commission could look closer at each property.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Trustee Caravas.
I would like to remind, you might want to mute your mic or turn something down. Echoing. The PCDC came to the previous board, I believe it was last fall, Victoria, as we were checking their calendar. And I think we had them stacked full for a good almost 18 months out, if I recall. So I would like to see the PCDC liaison get with the chairman of the PCDC and see where they see this fitting in. And it is going to be quite a task, and then a very informative task. And that's why Trustee Miller brought up what I was thinking is if we can't make it part of the comprehensive plan, because it is going to be a big piece that Trustee Rogan mentioned for future. And I like to look at the town 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and that would be a big piece. So I like to see it made as, if we can, as part of the comprehensive plan.
Excellent ideas, everybody. So we will have, once we receive information from the town administrator that goes to the PCDC, a future agenda item on that subject also. Grease trap reporting requirements. Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I'll try to be brief on this. This came up at a prior meeting, and Utilities Director Kaplan has given us basically a status report on where they are. And as he told us at the last meeting, at one time for a prior board, or maybe 2 boards ago, the PCDC recommended I think it was a quarterly report requirement be added to the municipal code for businesses with grease traps. That did not get adopted. I'd like to see us consider that again. If that's still the PCDC's recommendation.
UEB.
As I said, some things have changed, but if they're still recommending that, I'd like to see us take it up. But I'd also, just kind of looking through what some other towns do in this, some of them not only require reporting, but they require actual cleaning of grease traps to be reflected in reports at a specified periods, quarterly, every 6 months, whatever. So just like on the other item, I'd like to see us take this up once we get a recommendation from the PCDC and the Utilities Director. I think it's worth considering, because ever since the new wastewater treatment plant was in the planning stages, some things were identified that the town needed to focus on, and one was potentially pre-treatment of commercial and industrial waste, and the second was making sure that we had an adequate grease trap compliance system in place. So I think it's important, and I'd like to see us, this board, to consider an updated UEB recommendation in that regard. So I think this merits future consideration based on a proposal from staff and UEB.
I don't think that there'll be any objections. Are there any? No. So that will be a future agenda item when the information is prepared for the Board of Trustees consideration. Summary of action items. Madam Clerk.
Okay, I have got, Trustee Rogan requested that we send out an email blast to the public when the agenda is published. There was, options were presented to the board for the revolving loan fund businesses that have defaulted, so we need to follow up on that. Staff is to meet with the subcommittee to revise draft resolution for the Boards and Staff Relations Advisory Committee. Staff is to move forward with the purchase of only 8 Lake McIntosh water shares, not 9. We are to schedule a workshop for Ordinance 1088 on October 19th. Staff and PCDC are to try to work together to catalog town-owned parcels. And we're going to schedule, the PCDC liaison is to work with the PCDC to catalog the town parcels for sale, or maybe I already have that. Yeah, that's twice. And then this last one is a UEB recommendation for grease trap reporting.
Madam Administrator,
Did I miss anything?
You're on mute, Victoria.
you okay? You have nothing to add? Counselor?
Yeah, two more board discussion items for the next agenda. One on shutting off town utilities for code violations, specifically STRs in particular. And then two, what to do, if anything, about the difference in the lodging tax for the town versus private businesses.
Can anybody else think of anything else? At 9:45, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Record.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. This was a great meeting.
Dave. FYI, October 17th, board retreat. That's before our
Where are we
next.
going? Where are we going?
Oh, also real quick, Mitch Roseborough with the Sheriff's Department was in today, and the girls softball team they play one more game, I think, before they get to state, and they're going to be they used to do a big send off when they'd go play, but they're going to be playing here, so they're going to be doing a send in, and they're going to be meeting, I think, at the Mormon church and lining up with the sirens and everything for the softball. So that should be fun.
Yes.
Yay.
That's great.
Yay.
Thank you.
Victoria, for the board retreat, you should put up pictures of Hawaii in the background.
Yeah, backgrounds of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Actually,
everybody.
I shouldn't call it a retreat. It's really a workshop.
A
But
long
yeah,
one.
that's going to be interesting to try to coordinate. So yeah, that's going to be fun.
Okay.
But and we are going to try to have a UEB meeting October 29th. So we'll get that on our calendars too. Or not UEB, Laura. I'm sorry, Laura.
David, one thing. Thank you very much for getting the crosswalks done for the children in Stone Canyon. Thank you, sir.
Just in time for the bus today.
Yes.
You're on mute, Dave. Dave, you're on mute.
It wasn't just me. It was plenty of people. Plenty of people.
Thanks for getting it done, sir.
Okay, thanks
good night.
everyone. Have a great night. Home.
Good night,
later.
everybody.
Hey, Dave, I'll be
Take
there
care.
about 8:45, 9 o'clock tomorrow to start shoving.
The chipper's already there.
All right.
It's a harvest moon, Mike. You could go out tonight. Yeah.